What is up, wrestling fans, and welcome to this special edition of 2001 A Wrestling Odyssey, where we are going to be doing a retro review of WrestleMania 17. And joining me on this trip back in time is Robert D. Felice.
Hello, everyone.
And for the first time, I think, maybe, as a guest on the Tony panel, it's Tony Mango.
What's up? Oh, wait, that's not how I'm supposed to do that, right?
Yeah, I know the being introduced onto this show isn't exactly your forte, as you're usually the heading things up, but taking a different spot on the panel today, how does it feel? Is it comfortable?
I like being on the side of the Tony panel. There's a lot less pressure on it, so
Yeah, I do all the hard work on these shows. So that's fine. Because especially when you're talking about a show like this, because WrestleMania 17 is widely considered one of the best pay-per-views in WWE's entire history. It's a reputation that I think is well deserved. Like it's up to you whether you think that it's the greatest WrestleMania of all time, one of the greatest pay-per-views of all time. But I think most people could be in agreement that this is a high-level show. And Tony, this is a show that you had never seen in its entirety before.
that is true. I've watched, I think 3 of these matches separately, just sort of on a whim, just let me pop on the TLC match or let me pop on whatever. But, yeah, this is the first time I actually sat down and watched it. And to be perfectly honest, I watched it over the course of 2 nights because it's WrestleMania time frame, so can't really give it its just due if you're starting it at 5:30 in the morning. But I'm glad I actually sat down and watched the whole thing. If I would have watched this live, that would have been nuts.
Rob, I'm certain that you've watched this plenty of times over the years.
I have seen it full through twice now, but I've seen the major matches many, many times.
Okay, so we'll just go through just the admin to break down this show. Took place in the Reliant Astrodome in Houston, Texas. The announced attendance, which is obviously WWE's way of saying this is about 20,000 over what they actually was, but it was announced 60,925. That makes it the 18th most attended pay-per-view in WWE's history. You would expect it to be higher considering the reputation that it has, but that's how it goes.
It's a shame it's not the 17th.
Are the other 17 WrestleManias?
No, because not most of those shows. I can't say that I've listed all of those shows off the top of my head, but not all of them are WrestleManias. Like you've got the SummerSlam '92, obviously at Wembley, much bigger attendance than this one. But this was the first ever WrestleMania, at the very least, to surpass 1 million pay-per-view buys. 1,040,000 buys. Held the record until WrestleMania 23.
Damn, that's a long time.
Yeah, which was the obviously the Battle of the Billionaires, which was the big draw for that show. Amazing that Donald Trump is the biggest draw until I think the highest pay-per-view draw they ever got was for the Rock Cena match.
Which one?
The first one, I believe. Yeah, I think the first one was the one that got the most buys.
That makes sense.
Yeah. So once we get into the actual show itself, the opening video package, how do you feel about the idea of WrestleMania being a celebration of life?
That's one of my first notes. The first note I have down is cheesy, and then the second one is, why does WrestleMania is the celebration of life transition into Limp Bizkit?
Because Limp Bizkit is life. Tony.
The celebration of life. I've never once looked at any of these 34 WrestleManias that we've seen and ever been like, you know what? This is about a lot of pageantry, and it's the showcase of the immortals, and I'm feeling a little Lion King Circle of Life vibe too. It's just sort of
which just the idea of like this show is supposed to be like this is what the world comes to see. I do like that sort of aspect of it, that people are just watching all over the place, trying to just catch a glimpse of all these moments, even though it shows clips from like the first few WrestleManias, which are only available on closed circuit television, and yet there's some people in China watching it or whatever.
People are hanging out in the back of their car in the middle of the fucking countryside watching it. It's like, huh?
Yeah. didn't know they had the network back then.
Very
But,
strange.
so what do you think? I wanted to ask this going early on. What do you think of the X7 name?
Weird.
Hate it.
And I don't mind it as a stylistic choice, but when Howard Finkel literally said WrestleMania X7 has set up, that was very weird. I didn't like it.
I mean, this is during a period where I don't say a period of time because obviously each over the course of many years, but ever since about WrestleMania 10, they started fluctuating between the way they would pronounce WrestleMania in terms of whether they're going to use Roman numerals. Obviously, the previous year you had WrestleMania 2000 as opposed to WrestleMania 16. So they just were mixing things up every now and again. And obviously, WrestleMania 18 is X8. Whereas this one is X7, but the 7 is spelled out rather than just being the number.
Yeah, so this one's the letters, and then the next one is literally just X and the number 8. And then
they go back to Roman numerals until what, 25?
21, actually, WrestleMania 21.
Yeah, and then they go back into the Roman numerals a little bit later. They go into the Roman numerals when they have the worst Roman numeral. The
Triple X one. Triple X, WrestleMania Triple X.
I wasn't even going with that one. I was going with 28. Because 28's the one that's the longest. You know,
that's pretty bad.
XVIII. It's like, you know, at that point you do the 28, but when you've got like XIX or something, it works well. And I can understand why they did WrestleMania 2000 because everybody was like obsessed with 2000 at that point. It's like the Edge-O-Matic 5000, whatever, that kind of crap. But I don't know, like X7 to me just screams that type of time frame, and it's good for that. I guess it was probably cool back then, but it's so stupid to me right now.
Do you think it might have been some way motivated by the XFL?
Is that, yeah, you know what, that might be. Throw as many X's out there as possible.
I do want to say, just going back to the intro real quick, WrestleMania can arguably be a celebration of life when you're Vince McMahon, and this is literally like your entire existence. But not everybody is Vince McMahon, and I don't think Vince McMahon understands that not everybody is Vince McMahon.
I believe it's based on what we've already discovered so far, there's only one Vince McMahon. And that's probably a good thing. But a few other little bit details. What do you guys think of the staging?
For the arena itself?
Well, just the arena, just the entrance ramp, the just staging surrounding it. Obviously, current WrestleManias probably blow this out of the water in terms of just grand design, but in terms of within an arena, how do you feel this one looked?
I have written down strange arena with the ceiling and all, but I know by the end of it, I was just feeling it. So thumbs up for the most part. The stage is a little bit could be, a little bit better, but then again, we're spoiled by the most recent ones too. So
yeah, I think it's a really cool setup.
I love the shots of the crowd. I thought the cameras. I know Kevin Dunn gets a hard time a lot of the time, but it's just a case of the sweeping shots of the crowd. There's signs everywhere. It's like it's such a cool visual. It feels like people are just so excited to be there. And go ahead.
Yeah, it's a hell of a lot better when you compare this to something like I had just recently watched WrestleMania 10, and even though it is 7 years after that point, and it's not Madison Square Garden, which is obviously more compact and everything like that, but if you look at I don't know, WrestleMania 14 even, it's a little more understated than this, and this is maybe one of the first ones that it makes it feel like it's like a big grandiose stadium type of feel.
I think that's kind of the theme throughout the night, is this is the beginning of where we are now, where it's like everything is a callback to history, everything is, big and in a stadium. This was the WrestleMania that started a lot of that.
I'll ask you this first, Rob. Talk to me about My Way.
All right, well, listen, that Fred Durst gets a lot of shit, Limp Bizkit and that whole new metal time gets a lot of shit today. But that song fucking slaps. That is probably the best pay-per-view song WWE has ever used. I might feel a little differently, but I just got through, listening to it, watching that promo again before you recorded. That's so good. Like, it's so good. If you disagree, you're wrong.
Tony, do you disagree?
Let's put it this way. It is very good for what it's going for. It is it's catchy. It's the type of thing that I have it stuck in my head, and I watched this event 2 nights ago, and it's still just stuck in my head, so it works really well. I wouldn't say it's the best, though. I still think Ladies and Gentlemen is the best one.
That's also a very good one.
Yeah. I'm a big fan of this song. I just think it builds up really nicely. Like, starts off with a very slow like rhythm to it, and then it just hits you right when you need it to. Like, especially when you talk about the Austin Rock video package.
Yeah.
It just hits right at the moment. Like, okay, now we're into this high energy. Like, we're just gonna beat the shit out of each other, and I think that really works well. It's probably, I mean, I can't say that I have a huge knowledge of Limp Bizkit's discography, but I think this is one of their better songs, along with like Build a Bridge and stuff like that.
Yeah, anything that they used for WWE was probably the best of what Limp Bizkit had to offer.
I mean, they are the WWE's favorite band in the whole world.
That's right.
And I guess like the final thing before we move into like the first actual matches, commentary on this show, Jim Ross and Paul Heyman. What do you guys think of Heyman as the like the co-star to Jim Ross's commentary?
Really good, I think. It's definitely odd in the placement of WrestleManias. Like, JR and King are so iconic that this is like the odd one out. But Heyman did really well. And he was genuinely pleased to be there, as he said in the intro. He didn't get to do it as manager or as the head of ECW, but he's here now, and he couldn't be any happier.
It's a little strange, but they work. It's not my ideal of what I would want a WrestleMania commentary team to be, because there's times where Paul Heyman gets a little bit too like self-serving. Not to like, crap on him. It's not like he's bad or anything, but sometimes I feel like he's hamming it up a little bit more than what a commentator should do to draw attention to himself. And he plays off of Jim Ross well, and whatever. It's, you give me this team, or you give me the team that we've got now, I'm going this team for sure.
Oh yeah, I don't think there's any question with that regard. I think Paul Heyman harks back a little bit to like a Jesse Ventura type commentator. He's a guy that will challenge the babyface play-by-play commentator, and try and call them out on their bullshit every now and again, which I kind of enjoy. I think it would have been fine having King and JR do this one, and people wouldn't complain by any stretch of the imagination. But Heyman was a nice change of pace.
And I think he kind of really kicks it in for the main event.
Oh, absolutely. Well, we'll definitely cover all of that stuff going forward, because now we'll get into the actual matches. Just to give it a brief mention, there was a heat match between X-Pac and Just Incredible, or X-Factor as they were known, against the oddball pairing of Grandmaster Sexay and Steve Blackman.
Why?
Because you're dealing with the X Factor,
I can tell you that at least the entrances and the dance that took place before the match actually lasted longer than the match itself, because the match was less than 3 minutes, and it was just a double super kick by Credible, and X-Pac pins Blackman.
Okay,
yeah.
But I have a question. Did Grandmaster Sexay look fly that day?
I mean, he definitely turned it up.
Did he turn? Good. I'm glad he turned it up.
I got a question that I'm sure you didn't do the research ahead of time, so I'm going to put you on the spot a little bit. Do you know who necessarily was on the roster at this point that wasn't on the card?
R-Truth, for one.
Like, there's quite a few people.
Outside of like injuries that were like, they can't get around it, but like, nowadays we have the WrestleMania Battle Royals to be able to get everybody on the card, whereas back then,
you're looking at people like, I'd imagine you'd have people like Hardcore Holly, Crash Holly, a lot of people in the hardcore title scene. So obviously Perry Saturn's on this card as like not in a wrestling capacity. Dean Malenko as well. You've got a lot of the women who were still employed at that point on, like I guess you'd say people like Terry Runnels, like not exactly wrestlers, but
Tori.
Well, Tori was pretty much on the outs at this point, as she'd been revealed as the ninja lady. There's no Molly Holly, no Al Snow, people like that. There's a few like mixed people. I can't say that I have a complete knowledge of the entire roster in 2001. Hopefully I will have by the end of this travel back in time, and obviously there's none of the WCW guys that have just been recently acquired. They're all sitting in stands somewhere.
Just for the sake of it, I decided to look it up. I'm actually referencing a Sporkle quiz out of everything that's out there, but it looks like the people that weren't booked on this card, I don't know if any of them were injured or anything, but S.A. Rios, Big Boss Man, Scotty Tuhati, D-Lo, Chaz, Hardcore Holly you mentioned, Rikishi.
Rikishi and Haku is probably two of the bigger ones that are missing from this.
Chuck Palumbo, Billy Gunn. The other members of Right to Censor all popped up. K Quick, Dean Malenko. Oh, wait, no, he popped up there. Kai and Tai was still on the roster at this point.
Indeed.
The Mean Street Posse, Jerry Lynn, Tajiri. That might be it. Booker T. Oh, that's this is bringing in the WCW.
Most of the
people.
WCW guys wouldn't be signed by that point in time. I mean, I'd probably say Rikishi and Haku were two of the bigger omissions because they'd been previously in the build up to this feuding with the Undertaker and Kane, and just nowhere to be seen on this title card. Especially with Rikishi had just been involved with the running over Steve Austin storyline. They couldn't find a place for him on this card.
Well, but think about it. Kane is in a weird position where he's the last guy eliminated in the Rumble. He's going to go on to main event the next few pay-per-views, and then he's just like in the hardcore title match.
There's also Maven.
No.
Well, Tough Enough hasn't happened yet, so...
I was going to say, Maven wasn't ready yet.
Yeah.
Oh, that hasn't even happened yet? Oh, okay,
the first season of Tough Enough starts around about June or July. So he's there by the end of 2001, but he's not there yet.
Yeah, well then those are the people that we're missing out on, so we're not really missing out on much.
No, the rosters was a lot smaller back then. And a lot more special. Probably put that far as well.
Well, I didn't have like 19 hours of TV to do.
I forget, did they show any superstars like at the WWF New York?
Well, they showed one in particular, which I'll come up. Obviously not signed at the time. One that they probably wouldn't want to call back to. But we'll come to that at that point in time. But let's start with the actual opening match. I think we've danced around it enough. Chris Jericho versus William Regal for the Intercontinental Championship. Jericho comes out, gets quite a huge ovation. William Regal comes out to massive boos. He's the WWF commissioner at the time. They show this video package and building up to the match itself where Jericho pisses in Regal's tea. And they have things with Jericho in the Doink costume. So the one that got Shawn Michaels fired.
So credit to Jericho for working twice that night.
Yeah, definitely.
Busy man.
I mean, in terms of opening matches at WrestleMania, it definitely won't go down as one of the greatest of all time. But I can't help but being a sucker for William Regal in terms of just seeing him on the show just makes me happy. And I think him and Jericho have a decent match, a decent opener to just get the crowd warmed up. The crowd are definitely really into Chris Jericho. Regal tries to use a lot of dirty tactics, takes the turnbuckle pad off to ram Jericho's shoulder into it multiple times. But then it comes back to bite him for the finish because Jericho pushes him into the turnbuckle, hits the bulldog. And then for some reason, I guess William Regal was out of position. So he just hits a snap suplex for some reason and then hits the lion salt, which I thought was a little weird. But yeah, it's a decent opener. It won't live long in the memory. It's definitely no like Owen Hart, Bret Hart, or Daniel Bryan, Triple H, but it's a solid enough affair. What do you guys think?
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah, it's fine for an opening contest. It would be a lot better on a normal pay-per-view, and on WrestleMania, it's one of those things that's like, it works. You know, you got a commissioner who I'm sure at the time he was one of the biggest characters. You have him against the Intercontinental Champion, which that's a big deal. Jericho, of course, is a big deal. Yeah, that's it's thumbs up. Although thumbs down on Regal's horrible entrance music.
Yeah.
What a great song.
It definitely isn't the like the bum 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 that you get in his like later run. That was definitely more like menacing. But at this point, he was kind of just more of a comedy relief character.
But he's always been a real man's man.
Oh, absolutely. But I've noticed a few things. This early on, Jericho tries to hit a plancha on Regal and basically completely misses him. Like he almost just vaults him completely. Thought that was pretty funny, considering how like crisp Jericho usually is with this sort of stuff, just almost flying completely over him. And then they had this thing with JR referring to an enziguri by Jericho, saying that Jericho is resorting to the martial arts to defeat William Regal. Just an enziguri.
It's very 2001. Like we weren't in the place where we knew the names of every move. It was still kind of like, what a maneuver! Oh, that was a lucha libre style maneuver.
So Jericho gets the win, retains his championship. Then we move on to Shane McMahon arriving backstage, just recently purchased, quote unquote, WCW. And then we get this backstage segment with the APA and Jacqueline playing poker backstage. And then Bradshaw goes on to this massive spiel about, I assume, things that Texas people would be familiar with. I didn't have a fucking clue what he was talking about.
I have no idea what this rambling nonsense was about. And it's rushed as all hell. It's a weird delivery. It seems strange coming out of Bradshaw, especially in the APA time frame. This was just like bonkers.
I think it was just a way of trying to present that Bradshaw was like the big Texas guy, the big hometown hero, and that he'd be the person to say all this great stuff that happened in the Astrodome to try and gee up the crowd before their match.
So basically, he's just saying, I'm from Texas, football's big in Texas, I've seen people do football things in Texas. Listen, I'm from New York City, and I don't give a damn about football, so this was lost on me.
Oh, I thought you would feel fortunate following up with Bradshaw just turning into JBL for a second.
Yeah.
Well, that's actually, when I watched it, that's the vibe I got of like, hey, a little bit of JBL might be coming out here.
Mm-hmm. There's another part later on in the night, too, where it's very much like, I can see where you're going in the future, in hindsight, you know? But this was just so freaking weird. I didn't understand this at all, and since this is the second thing of the night, well, all right, let's put it this way. In the context of not ever having seen this pay-per-view before, the very first thing I see is this cheesy celebration of life promo, and then I get the Regal match, which is pretty good. And then I get this promo, and I'm like, what the fuck is this event? Everybody is talking about this being, like, the best WrestleMania of all time, and 2 out of 3 of these segments are these two? Like, very confused at the beginning of this.
I just say it takes a while to get going.
It does.
Because the next match is APA and Tazz against the Right to Censor. And the Right to Censor is being represented by Val Venus, the Good Father, and Bull Buchanan, accompanied by Steven Richards. This is just a real, like, as 6-man tags go, this isn't really a good one.
Mm-mm.
Some funny stuff. Did you guys spot the Irish whip of Tazz into the corner where he basically just rebounds off the ropes as opposed to bounce, like actually control bounce off them? Just literally just hits the middle and bottom rope at a rate of knots and then falls back into Goodfather and Buchanan, I think it was.
Well, that's how they would do it in ECW, Cal.
Oh, yeah. I mean, it shows, like, realism. It shows how much he's been pushed into the ropes. Not that's one of these softies that just bounces off. He just literally rebounds off of these, like he's been thrown at some massive speed. Tazz is obviously entering the back end of his career at this point in time. He takes most of the heat in this match. Bill Buchanan is a name that isn't really brought up a lot. I think he would work in a strange way nowadays, because he's a big man who was pretty agile. Obviously, he had no charisma or character.
That's the thing, yeah. He doesn't strike me as having any kind of personality.
But I think on like an indie level, I think he'd work as just like a big guy that can do a lot of like I don't know, scissor kicks and high flying crossbody moves and stuff like that.
He'd go over real well in Ring of Honor, probably.
You have other stuff. Not too much. Like when Bradshaw gets the hot tag, you can tell that he's just really amped up to be in front of his hometown crowd because he tries to do a backdrop on the Good Father, which goes horribly wrong. He almost fails to catch Val Venus into the fallaway slam, but manages to get it in the end. And then he hits a back suplex from the top rope on Val Venus. Like he's clearly going a lot further than he usually would. And then he dodges the Good Father's charge into the corner and then hits the clothesline from hell to win. Just a really, really basic six-man tag.
Yeah, but that's one thing I noticed about this card. They got a lot done, and nothing overstayed its welcome or really not building. And I think that's something that's missing from today's shows. They don't build. It's just like a wild roller coaster of, this was great, this sucked. You know, you don't see that here. It's building.
Tony, this
Yeah,
sucked,
my note says there's nothing to this.
I mean, yeah, it's just a case of like trying to get the Texan over. I think it was just maybe just something that was there to appeal to the home crowd and people actually watching it. I know the APA were big at the time, but like going back and watching it and knowing what I know about Bradshaw now, it's hard to really get excited for the fact that he won the match. And obviously this will be the final. WrestleMania 17 is kind of like the death knell for the right to censor as well. This is their last real pay-per-view together. They stick around for a couple of weeks afterwards, just on Raw and SmackDown, but then they gradually just disband and go back to their original gimmicks.
APA had a badass theme song though.
Oh, they did. I thought Tazz's one was pretty good.
You mean
as
Roman
well.
Reigns'? It's the exact same. It's the same as how Razor Ramon's theme turned into Steve Austin's. They literally just copied it.
You're talking like they're not very creative, or they don't put a lot of effort into these things, don't
Yeah, tell that to the Patriot.
So this event was sponsored by the Snickers Cruncher Bar. Do you guys have any memory of that at all?
You know, I didn't look that up. Let me see which one that was. Snickers Cruncher was the name of it?
Yeah. I assume it's just a Snickers with more nuts in it. Is the only thing that I can only imagine it being.
Which is probably big for Vince McMahon. Yeah, I don't like Snickers. But hey, they're still sponsored by Snickers, so go them.
Yeah, I was just wondering whether, like, because obviously I wouldn't be around, have had them around at that point in time, but just whether you guys had any fond memories of crunching into a Snickers Cruncher Bar.
You know, I think I have had this before. This looks familiar. And if I remember correctly, it's pretty good. Snickers is not my favorite candy, but you give me some kind of candy bar that's got some nuts and some chocolate and whatever like that, I'll fuck with it. Yeah. It's no nutrageous. I'll tell you
that.
Then we had a backstage segment with Trish wheeling around the comatose Linda McMahon.
Unbelievable.
This is the best acting that Linda McMahon has ever done. It's like she really feels at home in this character. They meet up with.
You think that describes her position in the White House? You think she just like sits there comatose?
Oh yeah, and just does whatever Donald Trump tells her to do.
Yeah,
I wouldn't be surprised if that was the case.
Except it's Melania wheeling her around.
They meet up with Stephanie, and Stephanie says that she says things like, "Oh, Mom, I'm so glad that like one of your kids turned out okay," after leading to the Shane Vince match, and then asked Trish to crush up some ice by hand for the celebrations with Vince when they win. And obviously, you can kind of see where it's going. In hindsight, you can definitely see where it's going. But at least they're building up to it.
She's wearing a jacket here that on the back of it says Daddy's Girl. And Stephanie may be the best actor in the family. She is phenomenal.
She's either the best or she's second under McMahon. It depends on your... Like, All right, if you want the over-the-top nonsense, Vince is the best. Because he's so fucking over-the-top for everything. If he gets surprised about something, his eyes bug out like 3 times the size of what they normally are. But Stephanie, she's got the more of the nuance going on. Although I will give credit to Linda. I mean, she's stone-faced here.
Yeah, I just imagined that she's just imagining how she reacts at a like McMahon reunion or something like
The
that.
family reunion, everybody's like going crazy. Vince is all like belly laughing like an insane person, and she's just kind of like, we're out of potato salad. Just one of those kind of things.
Yeah.
And Shane, I don't think is much of an actor. I think that's just genuinely how Shane is.
Yeah. This leads on to the Hardcore Championship match. Raven defending against Kane and the Big Show.
This is really good.
Yeah, I was just going to quote and say it. I absolutely adore this match. I think it's absolutely fantastic. It's just, I know this is something that we're not used to nowadays because hardcore wrestling is kind of it's contained within this period of time between the 90s, the Attitude Era, the early 2000s. And nowadays it's a lot more sanitized and clean, even Falls Count Anywhere matches that we've had recently and stuff like that. And we're going to have a Falls Count Anywhere match at WrestleMania this year with Shane and The Miz. This just feels so out of control. And it's just what the Hardcore Championship matches should be. Just 3 people beating the shit out of each other all around the arena. And it was so different to everything else on this show.
Which is weird because there's multiple other hardcore style matches on this card. And it still manages to give itself its own identity. Because they're fighting out in the back. They're doing some more dangerous things than some of the other stuff. I mean, getting hit in the head with a championship belt is nowhere near the same as one of my favorite parts of this whole thing. I wrote down, it says, I love the sound of Raven being thrown through the glass window.
Oh, that was
that
so
like
good.
Kind of thing. Fucking loved it.
Driving the golf cart into just crashing the golf cart. Raven did really well here, and I think this might be his one and only like shining WWF moment, but it's really good.
Yeah, I'd say so. In terms of like technical quality, like this isn't a technically great match. It's just 3 guys essentially brawling in a corridor. But there's some really cool spots like Kane and Big Show chokeslamming themselves through a wall.
Yeah, they broke like
just like the wall gradually collapsed.
Like 4 walls or something throughout this.
Yeah. Did you see that when they did collapse the wall through the chokeslam thing, Big Show hits his head on the back of that table? The back of his head on that table as he falls forward. Just thought that must have sucked. Obviously talk about the golf cart spot. So what was meant to happen was it was meant to be a golf cart chase, but Raven crashed going into the first corner, and he tells a story of how he was only a couple of inches away from cutting one of the master cables to the whole arena. So if he'd have hit that, the entire show would have plunged into darkness.
I mean, that still would have been kind of fun.
Oh, that would have been fun. Yeah, I'm sure.
That would have been awesome because it's hardcore. Like, we just took out the whole.
That would have been one
show.
of those WrestleMania moments that everybody goes back to as like they scrambled, they figured out another way to do it, and then wow, isn't that cool? Did they plan that? Oh, they must have planned it. They wouldn't have done that, and
Oh yeah, absolutely. It would have been funny if they would have had to end the show there, and then Raven could have said he had the main event at WrestleMania. But in the end, and obviously Kane is expecting when he's driving the golf cart with the referee on the back of it, which I thought was quite a funny visual, that he's supposed to be chasing after them, and so he doesn't realise that Raven and Big Show have stopped, and so he essentially just crashes into Raven, which I thought that must have sucked as well, just driving right into Raven's leg. But I thought that is a tremendous fuck up. Like, it's one of those fuck ups that you could just watch and go, wow, that actually, it didn't turn, I wouldn't say it turned out for the better, but it was great in a completely different way than the way it was supposed to.
Not knowing that information, I thought that the plan was just he runs into Raven.
No, it definitely was meant to be a chase down because you see they're just walking down the corridor, just fighting every now and again. Like, there was this amazing thing that just like a little detail where Kane smashes Big Show's head into like a little staging box or anything like that, and there's a salad on it, and Big Show just hits the salad, it just goes straight over the camera lens.
Yeah.
That was fun.
Yeah, this switch, you can see them scrambling in the background to wipe it off and replace the camera angle and everything.
Yeah.
So, unpopular opinion, I'm sure, but I really would like to see something like this initiated again. Because it's a break from everything going on in the ring, and it gives a lot of talent a place to shine. I think a 24/7 division would be really good.
Oh yeah, I think you could definitely do a lot of like, especially with the internet nowadays, you could do a
Yeah,
load of
like
social media videos and stuff like that of people just winning it randomly just on a day. You don't have to do the ultra hardcore stuff. Like you don't need barbed wire, you don't need chair shots to the head or anything like that. You just have a title that anyone could win at any point
Yeah,
in
the
time.
24/7 title. It works so
Yeah,
well as something that, like, I mean, you said that you're tapped into social media nowadays. If you were to do that and 3 o'clock in the afternoon on a random Tuesday, it's just like, yeah, by the way, the whatever title changed hands. It's like, it would be fucking horrible for me because of all the title changes I would need to put up on the website. But at the same time, like, that's what's fun about that kind of stuff. And the hardcore title was, as weird as it was, and as much as it was the type of championship that, you know, they gave it to like Pete Gas and whatever like that, this was fun. And that's the most important thing. It's sports entertainment.
I prefer it. Yeah, I mean, I prefer it over titles like, I mean, obviously the Intercontinental Championship has a long prestige, and so does the United States Championship, but they're just mid-card titles. Whereas this title had its own theme surrounding it, which I prefer about it. It's a title that only certain people would compete for, only certain people would win, because they're accustomed to that style, or they're willing to put their body through that punishment.
And it's got a wide range of flexibility too. Like, you can have one of the Godfather's hoes win it, yet at the same time, look at the performance that Kane put in on the Royal Rumble earlier this year. And then this is his match for WrestleMania. It's the Hardcore Championship. You know, this dude passed the record and he almost eliminated Steve Austin. And it's the Hardcore title, the same one that could be won by, you know, Jacqueline or by Crash Holly or a referee, you know? That's what's really cool about that.
Yeah. I mean, yeah. I mean, I didn't check. I'm pretty sure Kane's title reign ended probably the next night. And it was probably to Raven.
At that point, I mean, Raven won it like 19 times or something, didn't he? 26. God damn.
Yeah. But yeah, Kane ended up winning this match by essentially he big booted Big Show when he had Raven up in a gorilla press, sends them both crashing through the stage, and then he dives in with an elbow drop to win the title. The referee just counting on the glass pane.
That was cool.
Nice touch as well. But yeah, I think this is like just a really fun. I think this is one of the best hardcore championship matches in that title's history. And it was good to have it on this show. Again, it was just a like we said, completely different than anything else on the show, even though other matches have the hardcore element to them.
I got a couple of other little notes here that I had written down. Number one, why the fuck does Raven have plants in his shopping cart?
Why not?
Oh, he would have that shopping cart. It would just be, because we saw it at like at the Royal Rumble and No Way Out and stuff like that. He would just put random shit in that. Like, it would never be the same stuff in
That's
that cart.
fun.
He would occasionally have like bowling balls and cooking sheets and like blow up dolls and stuff like that. He would just put any random shit into that.
That is having fun. You know, that's the type of shit that, like, you don't have to go with the standardized, okay, you got the chair, the ladder. Of course, I'm doing this when we're doing the Smark Madness Best Foreign Objects thing, so that's really weird. Yeah, there's always a kendo stick under the ring. Why? I don't fucking know, because there is, and they like them. You have him come out, and he's got a shopping cart with what's that little, like, cutout of the little kid or something? Like, why not? You know, it's the fucked up hardcore title. Like,
I think that was some weird warning sign, but I'd have no idea what it's warning about. It's warning little children nearby. I don't know. Warning Hornswoggle incoming or something like that.
I got written down, Big Show's in shape, dude. Like, that might be the best shape the Big Show was in.
Didn't he actually fail at getting in shape?
Yeah, that's quite a funny thing that you mentioned. That is the idea of like he was sent back to OVW for like in the late 2000s to get back in shape, and he came back even fatter than he left.
looks so much better there than he has for God knows how long. And like the short-haired Big Show like that, like that's a good look for the guy. I think that he looks like healthy to me in that kind of environment. I don't know.
Yeah, I think he does look okay in that sort of things. I think the attire is fine for him in that sense. I think he's definitely looked worse.
Yeah, I mean, bald Big
like,
Show.
This isn't 2006 Big Show.
The bald Big Show with like the blue singlet and stuff.
Which was actually meant to make him look more in shape.
Yeah, failed at that. Speaking of failing, that padlock sure helped it for a good 3 seconds.
Like, I honestly think that a lot of the things they were making up.
Yeah, it had to be. I also have a note
but just having that nice
I have that same card table. I was just like, yeah, I have that. Yeah, this is a lot of fun.
Is it more or less damaged than the one that they ended up with?
Actually, theirs might be in better shape. I think I threw mine out a while ago. Now I'm thinking about it.
But yeah, I mean that was a really fun way of doing things. Then we have a backstage segment with Angle just watching the tape of Benoit tapping him out to the crossface and trying to justify to Edge and Christian that if it doesn't take place in the match, then he's not actually tapping out. Which I think is just like it really builds to their match very well.
Genius.
Yeah. Then we have the cut to WWF New York where we see Jimmy Superfly Snuka just hanging out with the crowd. I hope he didn't bring any girls home that night. But that's just...
What was that you said about a warning sign earlier? Maybe that was the warning.
Yeah, definitely should have had that wrapped around his neck or something.
I like how he's standing there being like...
I'm not saying that badly. I'm just... wrapped around the neck. I'm not talking about a noose. I'm just talking about like a necklace or something like that. Just like with a warning sign wrapped around it. God. Not that callous.
Callous Wiggins.
That'd be a good gimmick.
Callous Wiggins.
That'll be my rest of yeah. Then we have Jonathan Coachman, a young Jonathan Coachman, before the Raw announced team ruined him. Just talking to a fan who's travelled a long way from Australia, and she has definitely some real fascinating insight. Like, woo, WWF rules. and then we move on to The Rock arriving like an hour late to WrestleMania. That's really good of your champion to arrive at that point.
Spoiled.
You're the professional.
Well, Chyna popped up late too, so.
Yeah, I know. I guess some people just get the privilege.
It's almost like setting a bad example.
Yeah. I mean, you have to imagine, like, with Angle, he's probably been sitting there watching that tape the entire day. You can imagine that. Just watching Benoit.
At least he's not standing on the side like the way that they've been doing it. You know, the monitor being tilted at that angle. Like, it's not that kind of thing.
I know, it's a lot more organic now.
Tony, you don't watch TV at an angle? When you're covering these shows, you're not just watching it.
You know what's really sad is I actually do. Like, the way my setup is, my computer's straight in front of me and my TV's off to my left with like at an angle catty corner. So I actually do watch the TV at a fucking angle.
Doing it just like
it's really sad. I didn't think about that until right now. Well, at least if there's a camera watching me do this, if I ever set up a webcam, everybody will be like, oh, people do that. That's weird. Maybe he's going to get attacked backstage now.
Well, speaking of another thing that makes Tony sad, the European Championship is on the line. Test defending against Eddie Guerrero. First of all, Test was the European champion.
You're talking about titles that...
And he was wrestling at WrestleMania 17.
You're talking about titles that don't need to exist, and there you go.
Yeah.
My guy who no longer exists.
Oh,
that's...
Jesus, I'm sorry.
Two guys.
yeah. At least be
God, I'm sorry.
This match is like... Oh, first of all, we have to talk about the big thing in this match, which is Perry Saturn's hat.
Well, yeah, that was his gimmick for a while.
What, he wore a fat, fuzzy hat?
Yeah.
I have to ask this question because I heard this on another podcast, so I just want to ask you guys about it. Is Perry Saturn the only guy in wrestling to never get over with that handlebar mustache gimmick?
Simon Gotch.
I mean, he wasn't really a handlebar mustache. It was more of a like the I guess Dickensian twisted mustache at the end. Like this is a real full Hulk Hogan,
Superstar Billy Graham.
Superstar Billy Graham.
Maybe.
Like Scott. Yeah. This is
You know what's interesting is that according to Bruce Pritchard, Saturn was like the number 2 guy that they were interested in from the Radicals. He was like, yeah, it was Benoit, then Perry Saturn.
Well, he looks like a fucking tank, and he could wrestle. Like, if he had the personality, he would have gone far.
Yeah, maybe they were just so fascinated with, like, maybe they thought, oh, this guy could wrestle a broom, so let's put him with a mop.
With mop, yeah.
But this match, I'm not going to go and say like it's a 5-star classic or anything, but I think it's pretty good. It reminds me of a time when Test was actually had some potential about him. Like the big guy, little guy dynamic actually works out for me.
Test is one of those guys that, almost like I do with Ziggler now, I vehemently defended Test as a could-be, should-be star for the longest time. And unfortunately, he never lived up to that potential. But I always really thought Test was good.
So I stopped watching wrestling in the 2000-something range. I don't remember exactly when I completely checked out. But I do remember that Test was kind of starting to establish himself just a little bit when I stopped. And I remember thinking, oh, this is the next Kevin Nash. Like, this is the Psycho Sid that they're grooming. The guy who's going to feud with The Undertaker and be, you know, that, like, top type of guy. And it just didn't really pan out.
Yeah. You know why it's funny that you say that, Tony? Apparently, when he came in 99, Russo looked at him and looked at Hunter and Sean and said, put him in DX. He looks like Kevin Nash. And Sean and Hunter did not like that, and thus Test was never a main event guy.
Well, the only time he came close to the main event was when he was feuding with Triple H over Stephanie. And that lasted like a couple of weeks. And then Triple H and Stephanie just went and did their own thing.
Do you guys think that if Test were to come, I mean, obviously it's not going to happen now, but like you take Andrew Martin from that time frame and you apply him to the current Performance Center, do you think that he would be a success?
You get Dominic Djakovic.
Yeah, I think. I mean, the issue with Test is that in a steroid-free environment, I mean, obviously it'd be better for him because he wouldn't have ended up like passing away as he did, but he used that a lot to try and maintain his body, and I don't know how he would have figured out without that sort of supplementary help. But I think a guy like Test, as a heel, because he's a babyface here and it just doesn't work, I don't think. Like, he had a very lacking charisma as a babyface, but as a heel, I thought he was always very good because he was such a piece of scum, really, as a heel. Like, the stuff that he would do with, like, Stacy Keibler and things like that, and the way that he would objectify women, especially in, like, his later run in WWF, was like, yeah, this is a guy that's absolutely deplorable.
Admittedly, I like the nickname too. Like, you know, you go up and like, you can you pass the test? Can you beat this guy? Like, that could have worked, you know?
Yeah, he could be like a bodyguard for like a main event.
Yeah, like a Shawn Michaels.
And so like it's like this is the test that you have to pass to get to the next guy. But this match was, again, it was just like little guy, big guy dynamic. You had a few nice spots where, like Test hit a tilt of the world powerbomb, sit out powerbomb on Guerrero. Had Guerrero hit a brainbuster on a guy that's like at least a foot taller than him, which I thought was quite cool. But then you have this weird thing towards the end. Actually, there are two weird spots. First of all, Test gets his ankle caught in the ropes. And I'm pretty sure that was meant to happen. What I don't think was meant to happen was he was meant to get stuck there permanently. Because Eddie Guerrero has to come over and get him out of the ropes because he's so badly got himself caught in it. which I thought was just a nice little botch. And then Test hits the big boot to Guerrero, and then he has to wait for like 10 seconds because Malenko is running down this huge ramp that they've got set up. And so he has to wait for however long before covering him so Malenko can make the save.
Yeah, but he's no Charles Robinson.
No, he's no Charles Robinson. But I mean, it's not a DQ for any reason. And then Malenko distracts the referee for a little bit. Saturn tosses in the European Championship. Guerrero hits Test in the head, wins the championship. It's pretty straightforward. Again, it's a WrestleMania match that won't live long in the memory. But for what it was just a fine match. You'd probably see it on like an episode of Raw or SmackDown in the following weeks, but it was fine for what it was.
You know what surprises me here is that the Radicals were still together that long.
Well, that's the thing. They weren't together for that long because obviously during 2000, Guerrero was with Chyna for a while. And so the Radicals actually broke up around about June and then came back together in the first few months of 2001.
Huh. That's right, because didn't Saturn help Benoit injure Jericho earlier in the year?
Yeah, exactly. And then you also, I mean, people don't forget, well, people need to, like, will probably forget because it's quite forgettable that, like, Fully Loaded 2000 or something like that, Saturn beat Guerrero for the European Championship.
I very much remember that.
I don't.
Because I'm weird.
Yeah, so they had broken up and they'd been feuding with each other for a while building up to this, but after Guerrero and Chyna split up, like, through Guerrero's deviant antics, they just reformed the Radicals essentially, which is, and Benoit goes his own way pretty soon after, so it's not like it's a long-term reunion. But I think Guerrero, Saturn, and Malenko last a little longer beyond this point as a tandem before Guerrero gets injured. But yeah, it's just an okay match, nothing more, nothing less.
All right.
We have Mick Foley has an interview backstage with Michael Cole. So he's going to call the McMahon match down the line, and he does the cheap pop right here in Houston, Texas. Michael Cole looks awful in a tuxedo, and the frosted tips, frosted tips. Austin arrives, crowd goes crazy, and then we move on to the first like real great match on this card, which is Kurt Angle against Chris Benoit.
They could have main evented the show. You put the world championship in that match, that could have closed the show.
I'd say I'm spoiled by the number of Kurt Angle Chris Benoit matches that I've watched in my time. Watching this one back, it's still a great match because I just don't think that these guys could have a bad match against each other. But I look back and think they had better matches later on in their careers with each other than this one. But this is a good starting point.
Specifically, the Royal Rumble?
Royal Rumble 2003 is the one that immediately springs to mind. But I would have thought also like the Ultimate Submission match they'd have next month. The 2 out of 3 falls match they'd have as well. That steel cage match where Angle like does the moonsault off the top of the cage.
That all happens in 2001, so stay tuned, folks.
Yeah, we'll do having watching a lot of Angle Benoit. What do you think of this match, Tony?
Well, the way to start it off is great with Paul Heyman saying, "This is as excited a man can get with his clothes on."
Yeah, I love that line.
I have a note down. Angle with hair is the best angle. I don't remember exactly.
Are you? What?
I actually quite like the Angle with hair. I know, obviously, we've gotten so used to Angle being bald, but like, the first few years of Angle with hair, he looks quite handsome with the hair like that. It's more appealing look. When he went bald, it was kind of a lot more intense.
See, I don't think I have it written down for the look. I think I have it written down for like that era of his like douchebag character.
Oh yeah, this was very like prime Angle's the Olympic gold medalist that doesn't get the respect, and he thinks the crowd are a bunch of like. Obviously, he says here calls the Houston crowd bull riding beer belly yeehaws, and tells them to lose the cowboy hats. I thought that was a funny line.
See, when I see Angle with hair, I'm like, oh, this is prime. He's a nerd. Kurt
Yeah, this is
Angle.
Nerd Angle
Yeah.
before he becomes Wrestling Machine Angle.
But yeah, this appeals
Yeah.
to more of the athlete type of fan, and that's not a diss. It's a compliment, more for people that are into that kind of style. But you can look at something like the hardcore match, and it's just three dudes. One of them is like some demon kind of character or whatever, just beating the shit out of each other, and anybody can kind of get into that. It's the same as like popping on a World Star video or something. And this is more, let's show you professional wrestling, because they do a good job here. Like, I mean, it's also got a little bit of the pageantry too, because it's like, I really like that, like, Benoit kicks out of the angle slam after that false finish with the whole, like, the referee tapping out, the referee bump, and Angle tapping out with the referees out of commission and all that. And the ending to it is a really good ending, because it really puts over Angle as that type of ass who is putting over the idea that he really wants to beat him by submission, yet since he can't pull it out, low blow, holds the tights, goes for a pinfall instead. That's a good way to tell a story and to keep that feud going to where you eventually need to have some kind of a submission match, Big fan.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
All right, it's early in the year, but I'm gonna ask specifically Callum, but Tony, you can chime in. Is Kurt Angle the MVP of 2001?
Ooh, I think we're too early to say. I think in 2001 we're definitely going to see a lot of Angle towards the main event and having standout matches. I mean, we've still got the Kurt Angle Shane McMahon match at King of the Ring to come up, so we'll definitely be talking about that one as well. But I think he's definitely going to be high up on the list. But I think Austin will be quite high up that list as well towards the end. But we'll wait and see. I know at least this one. I think the story of this match is pretty phenomenal, in the sense that they start off with the chain wrestling, and they're just trying to do one-upsmanship, and Angle's the one that ends up getting frustrated and just starts decking Benoit, and it becomes a bit more of like a traditional match. I thought that's a great way of building it up. I think the commentary is fantastic for this match in particular. Heyman in particular is just talking about how this is the greatest display he's ever seen of hold and counter hold. And it's just like everyone applying their own submissions. They put like Benoit applies an ankle lock of his own, and Kurt Angle does a crossface. Again, I always feel uncomfortable when I see Benoit do a diving headbutt, but he does that in this match as well. And then you have the finality thing, which is Angle pulls the tights on a roll up to steal the victory from Benoit. And I think it's the right ending to have. Have the guy that you want to be the heel going forward steal a victory through dirty means, proving that even though he was craftier and got the win, he still hasn't proved that he's the better wrestler out of the two of them. And it just leads to more matches going forward.
And Benoit, as we'll see in a backstage segment, will get his revenge quickly. But what do you guys think about feuds kind of just getting started at WrestleMania instead of culminating at WrestleMania?
I think for the most part you should have the finality, but I'm fine having, especially with this one, which was rooted like right in the middle of the card, that could be a starting point. Because at the end of the day, even though WrestleMania provides finality, it should also provide the starting blocks for the next thing they've got coming on. And I thought this match in particular, it definitely, because this was their first singles match together, or at least their first big pay-per-view singles match together, it definitely should have led to more matches. So I'm fine with this one.
And
I
I
can
didn't
agree with
see
that.
the other ones, so to me this was just sort of like out of the bubble. Good match, great match, I would say.
Oh yeah, I think
You owe it to yourself to watch a few of these.
Oh yeah, this match is one of the ones that you should go out your way to watch. I think it's quite weird for the time, really, because WWF at this time was so hot, like high impact, like hardcore style, like the big moments and stuff like along those lines. But I think almost the crowd didn't expect this type of match, even though it's these two wrestling each other. And so I think it took them a little while to get into it, but I think watching it with modern eyes, it's probably even better than it was back then.
Yeah, I think that's fair.
But then we move on past that to a backstage segment with Kamala destroying William Regal's office. Just like a fun little WrestleMania cameo before Kamala enters the Battle Royal. Then they did a big video package with a WWF pep rally with US troops. And so you just have people like Undertaker, Bradshaw, Trish, Kurt Angle, Jacqueline, Lita. I love the fact, one thing I love about it more than anything else is that Kurt Angle did it in character. It's just, nowadays you would just see them just be completely out of character. And to be fair, we will see that when they also do an Access video package. But in this one, at least Kurt Angle was just like, oh, it's great that these guys get to meet their own Olympic hero. And things along those lines.
They give him the plaque, and he's like, "Can you actually make it into like a metal form so I can wear it around my neck?"
Yeah, it was great because it wasn't disrespecting the people, but it was still in Kurt Angle's character.
Yeah, it's like the Kurt Angle character. He's an asshat, but he is going over there to do that. It's just he happens to be one of those people that doesn't understand that everybody would hate him. This is very much the precursor to Tribute to the Troops.
Oh, absolutely, yeah, definitely. I mean, obviously, this is still pre 9/11 stuff.
I was gonna say.
Oh fuck yeah, it is. Wow, I didn't even think about that.
That's when the Tribute to True stuff like really steps it up after that point. But at this point in time, they're still showing some sort of. I mean, this would be Gulf War territory, right? Or close to Gulf War territory.
Close to.
When did the Gulf War end?
Because.
Oh yeah, it was
actually the second Gulf War was.
It starts as a response to 9/11.
Yeah.
Like so I don't know if there was any sort of fighting really going on at this point in time, but it's still something that they were probably building up a reputation around more than they had done previously.
But even just seeing Bradshaw kind of like lead the charge for this, you can see where he's again kind of like how the little bit of the JBL character came in with that weird fucking promo. This is him kind of being like, we should do this like troop thing and we should do this. And it's great that we're talking to these people and all that. You can kind of see like, the gears are moving a little bit.
Now, had Bradshaw written that book yet? The Make More Money Now book?
I can't answer that one with any sort of confidence, but I know that's something that they bring up around, they start to call attention to around about 2003, 2004. But he must have at least had some background in that by this point in time. I think he was seen as like a quote unquote, and I hate this terminology, but a quote unquote locker room leader at this point in time. So that's probably his reason for being there, and also he's probably he strikes me as somebody that always wants to be involved in these sort of patriotic attempts. It seems to fit his personality quite nicely.
The Have More Money Now book is listed on Amazon as July 1st, 2003.
Right.
Okay.
So not quite yet. He's still rooted firmly in the tag team division still. And then we, like you said, Rob, earlier, they do the backstage interview with Kurt Angle celebrating his victory, and then Benoit attacks him and then puts him in the crossface, so he starts tapping out again. Just a good way to just extend the feud. Just it doesn't extend its welcome, like it's only there for like 30 seconds or whatever, but you know that this match is gonna take place again going forward, which I'm sure most people would be excited about after watching this for the first time. Then we move on to the Women's Championship match, Ivory defending against Chyna. This is like, it has a very short video package because essentially this match was booked until pretty much the final week leading into WrestleMania.
You know how that feels modern day.
I know, very, yeah. Chyna had essentially had previously broken her neck and had quote unquote re-injured her neck in a match with Ivory, the Royal Rumble, which we obviously covered in our Royal Rumble review. Chyna came back, challenged Ivory for the Women's Championship, and she signed. It's quite funny as well, like talking about modern day stuff. They explained how Chyna had signed a hold harmless agreement, much like Becky Lynch signing it to have a match with Charlotte at Fastlane.
Oh, watch out, Ivory! Your title's gonna get stolen by Charlotte Flair.
So the idea was that Chyna would promise not to sue if Ivory re-injures her neck, and on the other side of things, you get RTC banned from ringside. You have that Chyna entrance with the big firework gun.
Yeah, what the fuck was up with that? Why does she have a pyro gun?
She started doing that around about 2000 as part of like just her entrance. I don't know what the reasoning was behind it. But
I imagine she had a big pyro bazooka for the same reason that she was given the big sausage during the DX barbecue segment.
It's just weird. Like, since I don't have the context to this, when she came out, I was expecting her to just have a regular entrance, and here she is. I thought it was a t-shirt gun at first, and I'm like, she's just gonna shoot t-shirts at people? Okay, and then it's like, all right, never mind, fireworks are coming out of this. So that's Chyna. Like, that seems more flashy than what she would be, you know?
I can see it on those lines, but it felt like her entrance was a pretty big deal, and she was like a huge deal at this point in time in 2001. Like, she was the biggest women's wrestling star at this moment in time. So she comes out, gets a big ovation. JR like erroneously says that this be Chyna's first time compete for the women's championship, but corrects himself later on. So at least he gets it right after going wrong. Ivory, I think, does a fantastic job selling how terrified she is.
She's hamming it up too much for me. The note that I have written down is she's overacting more than people in B-movie horror flicks.
Well, that's that glow background.
I know, but I'm just not a fan of it. It's like, it takes me out of the situation.
Do you think she's hamming it up because she knows what she's going to have to go through in this match?
Yep.
Like, she's doing it to try and lessen the moment for Chyna because she knows that she's going to be losing the championship in a matter of minutes.
You mean Shawn Michaels Hulk Hogan style?
Yeah, pretty much. That would be the kind of.
What's that like? An issue where like did they have heat?
Well, Chyna had heat in a lot of the women's division side of things because she essentially she didn't want to compete in the women's division. Still, she wanted to compete in the men's divisions at this point in time. So she kind of feels like this division is beneath her. So she didn't have the greatest reputation behind the scenes, especially within the women's locker room. But essentially, this match is what you'd expect it to be, where Chyna immediately gets hit with a belt. Ivory just beats her up for a little while she's on the mat, and then Chyna takes over. Let's talk about Chyna lines instead of Steiner lines for her clotheslines. And then it's lifts her up for a powerbomb, which I don't think she really cared about how Ivory landed at all for that powerbomb. Just as long as she hit the mat, that was the only thing that Chyna was caring about. Didn't matter how hard she hit it or what part of her body she landed on. And then she just lifts her up for a gorilla press and then lays back over her very lackadaisically for the pin and wins the championship.
Now, Ivory has said in shoot interviews that that's the one mistake she feels like she herself made, is not kicking out of that pin and saying, no, if you're going to beat me, do it right and treat me with respect.
That makes sense, because it does come off really like a slap in the face, kind of.
Oh yeah, it definitely just goes to show that Chyna was just, well, it was presented in a way that Chyna is above the women's division, in the sense that
but in fairness,
this was your champion. And I know it was a chicken shit heel champion, but you beat her in such an easy way.
But in fairness to her, Chyna was almost the number one contender for Steve Austin's world title just a year and a half prior. So
yeah,
I can understand why she'd get that mindset.
Yeah, I can totally understand that side of things. Especially, I think the idea of transitioning her into the women's division was as a direct response to her neck injury, because it was the idea of like, oh, she's had the neck injury, she's been through a lot more like cosmetic surgery since then, so she looks more feminine than she used to. So it seems right that you could give the storyline that she's weaker because of the neck injury, so now she's competing in the women's division.
Speaking of,
but even at this point in time, I was going to say, even at this point in time, she's far too dominant for the other women, or at least that's how she's portrayed.
Speaking of the way that she looks, though, is this the most in shape that she ever was? Because she looks pretty good.
Oh, she looked amazing, I thought, in this thing. I know it's in like Chyna's way of doing things. I know there's still like very much elements of masculinity about her, but this is Playboy Chyna.
This is the most feminine that I can remember seeing her. And again, that's people are gonna like criticize, why does she have to look feminine, whatever like that. But for the women's division and all that in this time frame, she fits. Like, she looks like She just happens to be taller and a little bit more muscular than what most of the other women are, and that's really the only difference between that. She doesn't look like the Chyna that originally came into WWF, where it was like they were going, "Is that a man?" And like, it doesn't seem like that anymore. Like,
Oh, definitely not. No.
although her theme song apparently still says that.
But yeah, so that was just the Women's Championship match over in a couple of minutes. Definitely a far cry from the main event that we're going to have this year. But we move on to like the McMahon family having a huddle backstage with Vince, Stephanie, Trish, and Linda, just obviously sitting there. And then we move on to Vince McMahon versus Shane McMahon. Obviously, this is the real soap opera match for the entire event, and let's put it this way: it's probably one of the technically worst wrestle matches, but it's so unbelievably entertaining in every element. What do you guys what are your overall thoughts of this match?
So much gaga, but it works. And you have little things like Shane is beating Vince with the kendo stick, and Stephanie goes, "Oh my God, Shane, stop!" Like, that must have been slightly a real moment. As a sister, you're watching your brother beat up your father while your mother's over on the opposite end, acting like she's comatose. And I had mentioned this before when I watched it privately with you guys, but the fucking pop. This is how hot WWF is right now. Linda McMahon stands up and the building fucking blows. I was in shock by how loud that pop was. And, Vince, again, great actor, does that really hard swallow, like, oh shit, gets kicked in the nuts. And, like, it's a lot of gaga, and I'm sure a lot of people feel like, oh, why is Vince booking himself and his son at WrestleMania? But it's definitely one of Vince's better matches, period.
I have a note that says literally, such gaga, much wow. Because it is so fucking, like, for anybody who doesn't know, the gaga thing, that's what Pat Patterson refers to as, like, you don't need to go out there to have, like, a wrestling match. It's a bunch of, like, the sports entertainment type of bullshit. And that's 100% what this match is. And it's awesome. It's weird in certain ways. Like, Shane doesn't have his own theme music yet. So that's odd that they didn't give him, like, I don't know, even, like, the Nitro theme. Because this whole... Well, the WCW thing, that didn't really come out at a good time, did it? Like, that was, like, a week or so beforehand is when they did that deal. So that just sort of seems a little bit like shoehorned in there. But, Foley gets slapped by Stephanie, and he sells it super well. Stephanie's playing up the daddy's little girl type of thing, and she's being a pain in the ass. Trish looks amazing, and she's doing her stuff in there. Credit to Linda for not laughing when Vince picks her up and puts her in the ring. I would have busted out in laughter because it's so fucking ridiculous. What was the logical reason for why Linda waited so damn long to stand up?
Because it's WrestleMania, baby.
She's just waiting for the right moment.
That's it. Yeah, she's waiting for when he's most vulnerable, and maybe she got tired of seeing her son get pelted with a trash can. Don't know.
Is this also the first time that Shane goes coast to coast? Because they're acting like it.
Yes.
Yes, this was his first. This is the first instance of him going from one side of the
Very
ring to the other with that drop kick.
That was actually the one moment I recall from watching this as a child is, oh my God, Shane McMahon just did this cool thing where he jumps halfway across.
It's hard to tell in the context of watching it for the first time in 2019 because you're so used to everybody, like, I mean, there's that thing with Michael Cole from, I don't remember which time Batista did it, but Batista jumps off the top rope and he's like, I've never seen him do that before, and he has. So it's like, when JR's going, oh, what is Shane doing here? They do that kind of stuff all the time where it's like, well, you know what Shane's doing here. It's whatever. So I was like, well, either this is the first time he's doing it or they're acting like they completely have amnesia for it. So that's cool that it actually was the first time. It's a good way to end the match.
So obviously there's so much leading into this match in terms of like Shane had just quote unquote stolen WCW from out of Vince McMahon's clutches. You have the Trish affair. You have Linda's condition. Talk about the WCW people in the box. So the story behind this is that originally, because it would make sense, Shane has just purchased WCW, that some WCW superstars would interfere to help him win the match. But in the night before WrestleMania, Sean Stasiak, of all people, gives an interview to a reporter, letting them know that that's pretty much what the plan is, to have a couple of WCW guys run in and like get involved in the match. And so they get wind of that, and Vince decides, yep, that's not going to happen. He was very close to not allowing WCW people in the arena at all after that revelation came to light, but decides to just end up putting them in the box. And so, like, you've got some WCW stars in the box up there, just like a private VIP section. So you've got Lance Storm, Hugh Morris, Stacy Keibler, Sean Stasiak, Chavo Guerrero, Mike Awesome, Mark Jindrak, Mike Sanders in his only ever WWF appearance, and a very mullet-tastic John Laurinaitis.
This is not the strongest group of people to be like, we signed all these WCW guys. Look at fucking Hugh Morris.
You know what's even worse about it is the fact that these are just a load of like just mid-card to lower end WCW guys, and they all looked fucking bored to be there. They just looked like they were just sitting there, just like, okay, we're at this show. Like they look like they couldn't give a fuck about being a wrestler.
Yeah, they look like they're about as entertained as what you would be when you're waiting in line to get your food.
Well, we're recording this on Friday, and a new episode of Something to Wrestle with Bruce Pritchard just dropped. And Pritchard actually says that, no, the plan was for them to not be involved all along because Vince didn't want anything to take away from the importance of the family drama of the McMahon family and it being Shane versus Vince, not WWF versus WCW.
That makes sense.
Then why did he have Shane purchase WCW in the week leading up to it?
Because they got saddled with this, hey, guess what? We bought WCW, they're doing their last Nitro, do something.
That makes a lot of sense, too.
Okay, Shane.
Again, you guys are more prone to believing Bruce Pritchard than I am.
Well, in that case, I'm just prone to believing what we know, and we know that they throw together a lot of shit.
Yeah.
And that sounds like
I find it hard to believe that at least the idea wasn't bandied around that WCW would interfere in this match.
See, I wasn't watching at the time, all the other kind of stuff like that, whatever, all the preface stuff, but it strikes me more as they were hit with this WCW thing, and they just sort of 20 minutes of a discussion. They were like, what do we do? Well, Vince and Shane are kind of feuding right now. Wouldn't it be interesting if we did that to further that angle? And then we'll figure it out. And then they probably did bat around the idea that the WCW guys would interfere at some point. And then they probably would have had a whole thing where they would have said, like, well, then who fights on the WWF side to balance it out? Because you can't have, you know, Jindrak and this person and that person and Chavo and whatever, all along with Trish and McFoley and Shane and Linda, everybody up against Vince, because then it doesn't really make a whole lot of sense. You would need some WWF guys to go to Vince's, to go to bat for Vince, and then they would need to be heels because they're definitely the heels in that scenario. It strikes me as the type of thing that if this WCW thing would have happened a week later, or if they could have held off on it, it would have been so much easier to do, because then they could have had, like, Vince comes out the Monday Night Raw after WrestleMania and he's like, you know what, like, fuck it, I lost, but I'm moving forward, and what I'm doing is I'm buying WCW, and then it would have been like, whoa, okay, that's the next big storyline, you know what I mean? It feels like that kind of maybe got lost in the shuffle a little bit.
I feel like maybe that's one of the reasons that they really didn't do it, because Vince was presented as the ultimate son of a bitch, but there's no way they were going to allow WCW to be the baby faces. And they needed to position Vince to be a face.
Yeah. Okay, so they obviously go through the match itself. They had Vince somehow manages to give Shane McMahon a black eye with the first punch in the match. So Shane has just got a big shiner throughout the rest of the match because of it. You obviously have the moment where Trish comes out and slaps Vince. I have to say, and I know it's the element of hindsight, but this isn't this. I know Trish talks about how big a moment this was, but I'm watching this and I think that wasn't that big a deal. Like, considering what she went through with the whole barking like a dog angle and all that other stuff, this wasn't enough recompense for her. It's not like she came out of this and was the biggest female star in the entire company, because Chyna was the biggest female star and Lita was still bigger than she was and stuff like that. It's like she came out of this and she was just a hot girl. Like, she was coming into it, really.
Yeah,
that's just my opinion.
This doesn't age well because Trish Stratus is seen as an icon and a standard bearer for like women's wrestling, and she was barking like a dog not too long before this.
Yeah, I just don't think the pop or the follow up from it was like a big enough deal based on what it was. Because she wouldn't even win the women's championship until Survivor Series. That's like 6 to 7 months down the line. It's like it doesn't really feel as big of a deal when you put it that way. Then you have the there's this fantastic camera shot of when Vince sees Linda McMahon. He just mouths like, "You bitch."
You bitch.
Just like that. It's so good. Like, I have to say, like, when the McMahons have matches, I know it's like we might have had enough of McMahon family drama, but at this point in time, it's just they shoot everything so fantastically. It's like you're watching a movie scene as much as you're watching a wrestling match. Have like all these like the trash can shots. You have obviously, as Rob said, the Linda McMahon stand up and the entire arena just absolutely loses their minds. And then Linda stands there for a couple of seconds, like she's thinking about what she's going to do or what she was supposed to do at that point in time, and then eventually hits Vince with the low blow, which gets an even bigger reaction. And then Shane does the coast to coast after Foley's beating up Vince for a while, which gets like from Linda standing up. The reactions from that point in time is just huge. Like, I can't imagine what you'd have to do nowadays to get a reaction like that.
Yeah, which is why it stood out to me, because like this is it's just Linda, and literally all she's doing is standing, and it's like, fuck yeah, yes. Like, this was peak WWF.
She gets a better pop standing than people do when they're doing like insane suicide dives and stuff nowadays. Really just kind of like, yeah, it's great. NXT. Linda stands and people are like, ah, shit! Like, she fucking stood.
So Shane hits the coast to coast, gets the victory, hugs Linda. That gets another good. Like, all of the reactions to this was such a perfectly framed, like you say, sports entertainment match. This isn't a wrestling match. This is just so good in every other aspect of it. It's like everything that you want from a WWE like gimmick match. And yeah, it's definitely another one you should go out of your way to watch.
Vince McMahon as a performer is so much better than, unfortunately, a lot of today's talent. And I mean that, like, obviously they're better athletes, obviously they're better professional wrestlers, but like, nobody quite tells a story like that. You know?
If you take Vince's promo skills and Vince's ability to tell the storyline, like his ring psychology, and you apply it to somebody who's just straight up a great athlete but has no other kind of qualifying factors, like a random idea that pops in my mind, but like an Oney Lorcan type, who's just like, go out there, go and have a good match, but we don't really connect with you as much. Person would be, top of the food chain.
Oh yeah, definitely. After that, we see a shot of the Hardys at WWF Access. I think it's fair to say that Jeff Hardy's not the charismatic enigma at this point in time. Because these two are a vacuum of charisma.
It really is sad because Matt is sort of trying. He's like, well, I think that this is going to be like a great thing. It's a history and whatever. And Jeff is like signing shit that he's not even looking at when he's signing it. Yeah, shit's going to happen, whatever. Fucking I don't care.
It's like these are two guys that like whenever they appeared and stuff like that, the crowd would go crazy, the women would go wild for these two, and you just listen to them and just think, wow, you like have no personality beyond like just throwing yourself through tables and ladders in matches at this point in time. They definitely both improve over time. Matt considerably more than Jeff, and we also see shots of Triple H and Undertaker getting ready for their matches.
That was a cool thing. Like, hey, don't forget that this match is happening, and I think that that's something they don't really do now. They don't show guys just getting ready, and everything is either a backstage promo or nothing.
It'll be good if this year at WrestleMania that they do cut away for a split second and show like the New Day hyping up Kofi Kingston in the locker room. Not like for a big segment or whatever, just like one of those like 15-second interstitial shots of, hey, remember everybody, we were at MetLife Stadium and that kind of thing. Like just have some shots of some different things. Have Daniel Bryan talking to Rowan about, I don't know, fucking whatever. Like he's yelling that he's mad that Kofi's not in there or something. And then backstage, you got Big E and Xavier like slapping Kofi on the back and it just kind of jog it in place or something. Like that kind of helps keep up the idea that this is reality. Like they would be getting ready. There's no reason why Undertaker shouldn't be trying to practice punch and stuff.
I mean, he's the best pure striker in WWE.
Hell, a lot better than the Shane McMahon that we just saw.
Oh yeah, definitely.
That's right.
It adds a bit more gravitas to the match coming up. So yeah, I like that little cutaway. TLC 2 is the next one for the tag team championships. The Dudleys, the Hardys, Edge and Christian. I'm pretty sure there's not anyone who's listening to this right now that hasn't seen this match. So I don't really know what we can add to it, other than the fact that it's just the most unbelievable car wreck of a match in the best possible sense, because these are 6 great wrestlers and stuntmen. And you add 3 more elements to it as well with the interferences by Spike Dudley, Rhino, and Lita during the match as well. I don't think I can list every single spot that happened. Like I probably have got taken notes of everything, but it's probably just too much to go through because every single spot from about a couple of minutes in onwards is just huge and like would be one of the biggest spots in any other match. And in this one, it's just like a transition almost.
Yeah, like that Jeff jumping off and doing the swanton. They even suggested it's like, well, he sacrificed himself and that's the end of Jeff in the match. And he still goes on to do a bigger moment.
Oh yeah, we'll definitely move on to that that discussion. Just move on to the idea of like you got just to list a few things. You got the Bubba powerbombing Jeff through Edge through a table at the same time. You've got Spike Dudley coming down, does a Dudley dog from Christian to the outside to the like from the ring apron to the outside through a table. One of the things I did find contentious about this, and this is obviously like just a small detail in an otherwise great match. I didn't like how they set up all 3 ladders in the center. It just looked like, okay, we're setting all these up for a spot, as opposed to there's a real reason why we've put extra ladders out here to climb up, whatever. It's like, okay, so there's one ladder set up, they set up another ladder, and then Bubba, for some reason, instead of climbing one of those ladders, decides, okay, I've got to set up another ladder now, because that's what the spot's for. That was just saying that. But it's made up for, really, with Christian deciding not even to fall onto the ropes, but fall from the top of the ladder right to the floor in one swift motion. It's like, and he retired after Edge. Just like does that spot, and he's the one that retired after Edge.
Well, because unfortunately, Edge had more of these matches than any of them, right?
Oh yeah. I mean, he's featured in more TLC matches than anyone, I believe. But you have other spots like Lita, in JR's words, jerked Edge off the ladder.
I love that line. Especially knowing what we know.
Yeah.
And the way he says it, dude, Lita jerks Edge off the ladder. Like,
Lita was wearing some very loose-fitting yoga pants. Let's just put it that way. That was kind of her, like, just attire choice at that point in time. And she does the same thing that the Hardys do, where or after hitting a big move, she takes the top off. And obviously, Paul Heyman just shouting, like, doing his best King impression of, like, take it all off. And then immediately she gets hit with a 3-day.
Just like, this match, I mean, it's so much fucking fun. Like, a moment like that is like, wow, she does a move. Wow, she's taking her top off. Wow, she gets hit with a 3D. Like, it's just sort of like, you can't stop, you know?
But they have this thing which I don't think they've had in like previous ladder matches where the ladders get taken away and they're just swinging from the title belts. I don't know if they did that in TLC 1 at any point in time, but you just have like Christian and Devon just swinging from the titles.
I believe Jeff did that briefly in a Raw ladder match that the Hardys had with Edge and Christian, but it wasn't like for the length and the height.
Yeah,
that this match.
And it isn't planned, but 95 SummerSlam, Shawn Michaels dangles a little bit.
Oh yeah. Yeah, I guess this is more of like, this is the more choreographed version of it, or at least some sort of attempt at choreographing it. Jeff attempts to walk across the ladders to reach the tile, just completely fucks it up after one step. And it just all comes crashing down, but he makes a swift recovery, climbs up, does his spot where he's swinging from it. I just love the build-up to how this is all set up, with Jeff Hardy trying to get the ladder under him to try and get his footing before he can grab the titles. Bubba pulls the ladder to the corner, so Jeff is just like in motion when Edge hits him with the spear. And that spear it must be one of the top 5 spots in WrestleMania history. Like, that is something that's repeated over and over and over again in video packages.
I'd go so far as to say maybe a top 5 spot in anything history. When it comes to WWE, like, this is iconic, and no matter how many times I see it, it's still awesome. Also, imagine though, imagine if Jeff would have been able to walk across those ladders like planned. It would be even better, because then he would have walked over 3 of them and then did the pull and then did the spear. That'd probably be like the number 2 spot underneath Hell in a Cell Foley.
Oh yeah, I'd imagine so. It's just a case of like, you watch that and you wonder, how is Jeff Hardy still wrestling today? Because there is nowhere for him to land other than just flat on his back from however far up that was. That must have been at least 15 feet up.
Look, put this into perspective. I don't know what I did the other day, but I fucked up my wrist. I guess I slept on it weird. And it's been hurting me for like 3 days, and I'm like, oh, I hate typing.
Sure, that's how you fucked up your wrist.
Oh, it's the other wrist. But... And this fucking TLC match, one of the moves that they would have done in this, I would have been out of commission forever. I would have been like, no, I'm not ever doing any of this. Ever. And it's like Jeff does like fucking 10 of these in this match.
And then that almost like, that is a huge spot. And then immediately after that, you have this huge spot where both Bubba and Matt Hardy go through off the top of that ladder through a stack of 4 tables on the outside. It's like, give us a chance to breathe for a second, almost. But to think that the Jeff Hardy one is so iconic, and this one kind of gets lost in the shuffle, but this is huge, this bump.
Good sound, too.
Like, and you talk about, like, obviously, people almost prefer to take table bumps. You hear stories about people preferring to take table bumps because it softens your fall going to the mat. But these guys are going like bullets from the top of the thing. Like, by the time they hit it, the tables just explode. Like, this isn't just like a regular table break. This is just tables being obliterated and wood just flying everywhere.
This match is, I guess, the best example of if somebody were to, you know how, like, did you guys all see the Lego movie?
Yeah.
And it's like, you know, the kid is playing with the Lego figure and that's like the reality of what's happening in the story and all that. This match is what happens when you take a kid playing with the wrestling action figures and you make it in real life. Which is like, oh, how do you fall through like 50 tables from the fucking top of the ceiling? And it's like, and they do it for real. Insane.
Yeah, no, I can't believe everything that just happened in this match. I know people will obviously be like, there's a lot of great matches on this card. I think I might put this as number one out of all of them. It's absolute carnage, and yeah, I don't know how else to describe it other than that.
It's one of the best matches, and for me, it's the end of an era because it's like the end of, well, it can only be a TLC if it features these three teams. And yes, a lot of people can do a lot of crazy things, but they can't have a TLC match. Only these teams can. And the emphasis on the tag team division, because you had three teams that resonated with the fans and did the things that they did. So good, and I might have to agree, this might have been the best match of the night.
It is.
Yeah, at least we're in agreement on that side of things. So we move on from that epic match to like the precursor to what today's Access is. Really, is just like, honestly, they did like this video package for Access, and immediately I thought this is going to be quite low rent, and bits of it were quite low rent. Then I look at it and thought, wow, this is actually quite fun. It felt quite just organic, almost. It's probably the best word I'd say for it. The idea of, like, compared to nowadays, which is it's obviously very professionally done, but it's very sanitized. Well, this one felt a lot more just, I don't know, it felt more like an approximation of what the atmosphere was at the time.
A little grungier.
Am I alone in that? Yeah, a bit grungier, but like it still felt more like personable.
Yeah, it's got a little bit tighter of a feel that like you're hanging out with the wrestlers a little bit more instead of like you're waiting in line and they've got like they've printed out the thing that says like this is Fandango's line and it's got the fucking logo all over it, and you know this feels more like a low rent Comic-Con as opposed to Access now is like, you know, New York Comic-Con, San Diego, that kind of thing.
You know, imagine knowing what you know now, being able to call a match with Kevin Kelly at an Access. That's really cool. Like, I don't think they do that anymore.
No, I know they did that in like future years with like Michael Cole and stuff like that. That they would just have them. I know they've done that multiple times in certain WrestleManias. I don't know if they do that anymore. Or now you'd be doing with like Byron Saxton or something.
Oh, totally would be with Byron. He would be the one that would volunteer for it.
The funniest thing that I got out of this one was Kane in the mask and a t-shirt, just talking about how like the PR stuff was and things. Basically, just doing a PR job. Like this is Kane. This is prior to like unmasked corporate Kane. So I thought that was just pretty funny.
The Devil's favorite demon sitting there, and he's like, "You're great for the festival." Okay. They also and they don't have Access spelled the same way.
No, it is different in this version. Again, it's just like less sanitized version now. But again, now we move on to something which is fun in a completely different way. So basically, everyone thing in this card, the Gimmick Battle Royal.
Amazing.
This is so good. Like everything from like the Kurt Angle match onwards is just like, this is why it's one of the top WrestleManias of all time and arguably the best one. But so you have Gene Okerlund and Bobby Heenan come out to do commentary, which always leads me to the question of they should have brought Bobby Heenan back full time, because I know he wasn't. These two were having fun. They weren't saying the most crisp or inventive commentary or like real like sharp analytical insight, but they were just having a ball. I really enjoyed that side of it. You guys have any like comments about Gene Okerlund and Bobby Heenan coming back?
Sad that this is the only time we were able to get Bobby Heenan on commentary, and I really wish, the cancer hadn't specifically ate away at his voice, and that's the kind of thing that really makes this heartbreaking. And other than that, I think Heenan had great quips, like, look at this, we got the garbage man, and then the Doink comes out and he goes, oh look, it's a guy you're very familiar with, Okerlund. Like, just, I love the little quips that you don't really get anymore, and that, to be honest, people don't respond well to. So even when they're said, they're kind of like, because nobody really responds well to them.
I think one of the notes that I've written down is Repo Man comes out, and Okerlund's they're talking about, like, he's Repo Man, he takes things, so it's his fucking job, and Okerlund's like, yeah, 5 years ago he got my mother-in-law's car, and then Heenan goes, yeah, 4 years ago everybody got your mother-in-law.
Yeah, he was
That's
great.
like such a gut punch. I fucking love it.
My favourite line from Keenan things during the entrances of when the Iron Sheik comes out and he says, by the time Sheik gets to the ring, we WrestleMania 38.
You can tell he cannot walk.
Oh yeah, that was. I mean, what was he talking about? Thing. We'll start with like a depressing fact before we get into like the fun side of things, which was actually there's less people that are dead now in this match than there were on the rest of the WrestleMania card.
It's insane.
That's so weird to me.
Yeah, so in this match, the people that have passed away, and it's not even people you'd expect. I mean, you'd probably expect Nikolai Volkov at this point in time, but it's Earthquake, who actually died pretty soon after this. Like, it was probably only a couple of years afterwards. And Doink the Clown, Matt Bourne, has also passed away.
It's weird because Earthquake looks pretty much the same as he did when he was like on top in WWF, like 92 or something. He has shorter hair, but there's no real difference.
Yeah,
you know what? But Earthquake, when he was on top, was still actually in his 20s. When he feuded with Hogan in 90, he was still in his late 20s.
Yeah, and it's just like amazing to think about that, considering other people in this match, like Iron Sheik is still going, Sergeant Slaughter's still alive. I mean, that's all like obviously great things that they're all still alive. Both Bushwhackers.
One Man Gang still around?
Yeah, One Man Gang
He
still
looks
alive.
awful in this. That's 20 years ago.
No. Yeah, Tugboat's still going.
Choo-choo.
But just a lot of... and obviously the people that passed away on the main card, you've got Eddie Guerrero, Test, Chyna, and Chris Benoit. So yeah, that's 4-3. You could also add Grandmaster Sexay to the Heat match as well if you wanted to, just make it even more depressing. But yeah, there's, in terms of the people in this match, we've got the Bushwhackers, Duke the Jumps to Drosy, Iron Sheik, Earthquake, the Goon, Matt Bourne as Doink, Kamala, Kimchi. They were accompanied by Harvey Whippleman, but he wasn't in the match. Repo Man, Jim Cornette, who was actually wrestling. Nikolai Volkov, Michael P.S. Hayes, wearing a Confederate flag cape, which I don't think would go down too well nowadays.
Hey, I got another
One Man Gang, the Gobbledygooker, Tugboat, Hillbilly Jim, which is annoying because the network version gets rid of the Country Boy song,
which is bullshit. They don't own that.
No,
why not?
I don't think it's a WWE song. I think they took it, or I think they acquired it from someone else.
That sucks.
Brother Love, Bruce Pritchard, obviously, and Sergeant Slaughter. Now I have to ask this question: there's 19 people in this match. Do you think someone pulled out and it was supposed to be a 20-man match? So if you had a choice about, like, let's say,
did you say the Gobbledygooker?
Yeah, I said the Gobbledygooker. But I was going to ask about if you could add one other gimmick character to this match, who would it be?
That's tough.
As someone who really typifies a gimmick, because I've got mine. But I'll wait to see if you guys have got like an idea of like who you'd want to put in.
I mean, part of me kind of says you go with the ludicrousness of the whole thing, and you go with Mantar.
Yeah, that's exactly the one that I was thinking of.
I immediately thought, I wonder if they wanted to squeeze Dusty Rhodes into a pair of polka dots.
That would have been interesting because he would have just obviously left WCW. I don't know whether he might have been sitting on the Turner contract still. But I think if you want to go with like a gimmick, like Mantar's a great one. I would have seen if you could have gotten hold of what was that guy's name?
That's the next one that came to my mind. The magician guy?
Yeah.
Who had like the Looney Tunes finisher? What?
You got
that would have been an interesting
You got
guy.
Max Moon.
Yeah.
Technically, I guess you've got Tatanka, although he still was kind of like not seen as like a complete joke. Skinner.
Nails.
Oh, Nails, yeah. Well, that would have been fucking awkward.
Yeah, especially with Vince there for that. Like,
the Killer Bees.
Yeah. Could have got Coco Beware or something. Maybe Abdullah the Butcher.
There's a lot of people that they could have pulled from.
Yeah, but this was still great for what it was. I mean, let's put it this way: this is an awful battle.
It's atrocious. It's a fucking horrible match. That's just amazing.
Like,
who cares? Fuck it. This is...
Yeah, I mean, the entrances take about like 10 minutes to finish, and the match ends in about 3. It's just like people getting thrown over every like 5-10 seconds, and they're just taking the softest bumps. Actually, I thought I can't remember one exactly. One Man Gang, when he goes over, he actually takes quite a hard bump to the floor. Like, he doesn't grab hold of the ropes as he goes over, but he just like lands really hard on the mat. Oh, that must have hurt. Obviously, the temptation is to make a joke about how Kamala would do much better nowadays without the with the both feet hitting the floor. But yeah, we'll just move swiftly past that, and then you've got the final 4 of, like, this is the weirdest final 4 ever, of Sergeant Slaughter, Brother Love, Hillbilly Jim, and the Iron Sheik. And then essentially all that happens is they just all eliminate each other in a trap chain. So Slaughter eliminates Brother Love, and then he's immediately eliminated by Jim, who's immediately eliminated by Sheik. And then Sergeant Slaughter locks him in the Cobra Clutch to give like a USA happy ending victory.
Even though I'm surprised that they didn't put Slaughter over.
Well, because Sheik's legs.
The idea is, yeah, Sheik physically could not go over the top rope, and that's why he won the match, because he literally could not go over the top rope.
But it would have been better if they did that ending that they would do later, at like that Raw 15 where Ted DiBiase just comes out and he's like, here's some money. I win the match.
Oh yeah, they could have got Ted DiBiase for this.
IRS too.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. So I mean, still, it's a fun little diversion. A real, like, you talk about how you need buffer matches nowadays. These are the sort of buffer matches you should be doing. Just like a really fun throwaway match, which isn't about the action at all. You don't have to tire yourself out on the big moves and stuff like that. You just watch and enjoy.
So I have more notes about this than any other match.
Go ahead. Like, if you've got any more comments about it, just like go straight ahead.
Duke the Dumpster looks very weird. Without that, like, the old hairstyle that he used to have. He just looks like a completely different person. Does anybody ever, at any point in the history of WWF, give a shit about the Goon?
I mean, he comes back for Raw 15 one as well.
Why?
Like,
for some reason the fucking Goon is one of those, kind of like a Mantar, where everybody goes to 3 characters. You go to the Isaac Yankem, the Goon, and the Garbage Man, because like that's illustrating the point of everybody had occupations for some reason.
So dumb. Doink gets a huge pop during his entrance.
He always does. Like, every time he's come back, he's always gotten a huge reaction.
Well, first of all, wouldn't you pop for Chris Jericho? Second of all, send in the clowns, Tony. Everybody loves clowns.
It makes me... I fucking hate clowns. Like, I think that they are the stupidest thing in the world. Yet at the same time, the Joker's my favorite villain in anything that's ever existed in any kind of literature or whatever. I want Doink the Clown back. Like, after watching this, I'm like, fuck, man, that would be so cool if they just, like, at some point bring back Doink.
Why isn't Epico Doink?
Yeah.
Just make Epico Doink.
Doink Cologne. Like, let's go with it. Fucking All you got to do is put somebody in the mask and the outfit. Like, that's it.
I have to say, Doink Cologne sounds like Rick Martel's worst fragrance ever.
Jim Cornette has weird entrance music, but he looks pumped. He's fucking
he looks so
excited more
excited.
than anybody else in the entire night. He is just, you strap a rocket to his ass and he's flying out there. One Man Gang looked awful. They misspelled gobbledygooker. That was interesting. They have gobbly. Curious why they.
Do you know who was
rebrand.
under the mask? Was it Hector?
I
Did
can
they
only
get
assume
Hector
it was
to come
Hector.
back?
Should be.
That's
I can only
awesome.
assume it. I think they did because they brought the original Doink back, so I would have thought they'd bring back Hector.
If
for
not,
this one.
maybe it's Lombardi. And they're like, well, you already have Doink, so.
Oh,
No, Lombardi was Kimchi.
Oh, shit. Oh, didn't even think about that. You guys think that they went with the right idea with Tugboat instead of Typhoon?
No, because Earthquake is in the
But
ring.
Earthquake eliminates Tugboat.
And they immediately go to that, too. Like, well, they were tag partners.
It's interesting that you can see people pair off like that because Cornette and Pritchard go after each other and they're spending the majority of their time together. Tugboat gets eliminated by Earthquake. So, that's an obvious one. Okerlund calls Earthquake John Tenta when he gets eliminated. The Goon has no business lasting as long as he did. That's my note. Tons of boos for Doink's elimination. Brother Love being in the Final Four is crazy. Teddy Long's the referee of this match, so that's kind of interesting.
Yeah, I'm surprised you didn't try to turn it into a massive tag team now.
Hillbilly Jim is fucking huge.
yeah, he looks in good shape.
And he has a certain charisma to him that, like, he could have gone further. He could have been an even bigger deal, I think. And he's another guy that if you apply that guy to, like, a modern setting, he could have, he could have been a top guy. Not just, hey, Hogan endorses him and put him on the B show kind of thing. Let's see. Okay, this is something I want to get into. If they did another one of these today, because this is 20 years ago, I started writing down a list of names that people that could potentially be on there. And I just want to throw them out there very quickly, see if you guys agree about some of these. Hurricane would have to go in.
Yes, Hurricane has to be in it.
Of course, contracts and different things, injuries and whatever. Gold Dust, 100% would be in this. I would think Al Snow.
Yeah.
Boogeyman.
Yeah.
Val Venus.
Yeah.
I don't know whether they'd go with Val Venus.
Well,
because
yeah.
Gimmick, yeah.
Porn star. Yeah. It's still like, they could get away with it, I think.
Yeah, maybe.
The teacher, Matt Stryker. Of course, he's working for other companies, so that's not the same, but, just generally speaking. I would love it if Muhammad Hassan could come back. They would never do it, but it would be fucking great.
No. That would be
They
fun.
wouldn't do it. Also, but Eugene would have been the type of person.
No, they would absolutely do Eugene. Eugene's one of the people that I had. When you said this, I immediately got 5 names to mind, and Eugene was the first.
Gilbert, Hornswoggle, for sure.
Yeah.
Gangrel, Godfather. I don't know about whether you would classify him or not, but Carlito?
No.
No, it's not really a gimmick.
That's on the iffy side for me.
Yeah.
Pirate Paul Burchill.
Yes.
Oh, so good.
Simon Dean.
Absolutely.
Kevin Thorne or Mordecai, whichever one you want to go with.
Yep. He was one of the ones I had on my list.
Bart Gunn. I think maybe the cowboy thing.
Yeah, he came back for.
He did the Raw
Raw
15 one,
one.
yeah.
Flash Funk did as well.
Yeah.
Maybe a little bit of a deeper cut, but the Swagger Soaring Eagle instead of the Gobbledygooker.
Woo!
Well, that's really reaching.
This is one of those things. Jimmy Wang Yang.
The other one I had.
Deuce and Domino.
I had
yeah.
a different tactic.
Crime Time.
Yep.
The Spirit Squad.
Yes.
Kung Fu Naki.
Oh.
I got the Headbangers down.
Hell yeah.
He never really did anything with WWF, but Disco Inferno.
Oh, yeah, just as a funny thing. I mean, he's doing work at Impact now.
TNA. Or
And then
He's going to be fighting a Scarlet Bordeaux.
Yeah.
from Texas.
after criticizing women's wrestling. And
Hmm.
then I just started to think of people that were like more on the modern side, and I had Santino. Again, he can't really necessarily wrestle, but that's a different sort of thing.
Well, Santina.
Santina. It would have
Santina would be better, yeah.
Santina.
Like she's got battle royal experience.
If we're looking to the future of like, not necessarily doing it now, but doing it 10 years from now or something, Fandango.
Yeah, him and Tyler Breeze. I think
Yeah, the
would
Fashion
probably do.
Police doing that. Damian Sandow.
Brodus Clay, the fun.
Brodus Clay for sure was on my list. Damian Sandow. Los Matadores. Adam Rose.
They wouldn't do it, but do you think they'd do the Mexicals?
Nah, I don't think that.
They do super crazy. They do super crazy.
Super crazy, yeah, maybe that. Rikishi. He can't do it, but JBL. Sexual Chocolate, Mark Henry. Down the.
How about the Heartthrobs? Is that a deep cut?
I think it's a little too deep. Then again, I said Swagger Swearing Eagle, so. And the most like
The Highlander.
high profile guy that I could think of that would fit for this kind of thing is Bray Wyatt.
Oh, he could do that eventually. Yeah.
Oh, you're so mean. Come on. The man, he'll be bigger than that, I hope to God.
I hope he doesn't get much bigger.
I could imagine more than Eric Rowan doing it eventually.
Well, Bray Wyatt's like the figurehead of it, though, Like,
Oh yeah, I know.
and he can't say, "Oh, he was the WWF champion," so whatever, because they have Iron Sheik, they have Sergeant Slaughter,
I'd say
Yeah, well, that was going to be my argument, but I realized that.
I'd say there's one man in particular that you're missing.
Who's that?
Steve Blackman.
Hell yeah.
Well, that's not really much of a. Well, I guess I don't know. You can kind of constitute
His
it.
gimmick was the fact that he had no gimmick.
Yeah, that's true. Well, you could do head cheese
Yeah,
because you got Al Snow in there, but yeah, this is.
Yeah, this definitely is a concept that has far more. I would have this over the Andre the Giant Battle Royal. It has so much potential.
It's the type of thing that I get the point of the Andre, and I like that they do that because it gets everybody on the card. But at the same time, if you could just kind of get everybody on the card in some kind of other way, and then do this every 10 years or so, that'd be a lot of fun.
Carly would have to be in it.
Oh fuck, a great Khali. How did I forget about him? Yeah. And Rajan Singh or what's his fucking name? Del Rio's guy. Ricardo Rodriguez. Yeah, he would have to be in there.
Yeah.
I'm sure there's like ECW guys that I'm forgetting about, and nobody gives a shit about like Kazarni.
Put Sandman in or something.
The zombie.
A zombie. Yeah, zombie's long gone.
Is he?
Yeah.
Wow.
But it is kind of strange though that you have to go back to like the Simon Dean type of era or further back than that because we don't have gimmicks like this anymore. Like
no, yeah, it's very young. It's very less common nowadays.
Bray Wyatt's one of the only ones.
If he falls on his face on the main roster, we can say the Velveteen Dream.
That's true. Yeah.
Yeah. Eventually, Velveteen Dream could do it, but we're all kind of hoping for a little bit of a bigger impact for him than just being a gimmick character.
But it is strange. Like, you look at the roster nowadays, and there's really only, like, a couple names that could apply. Bray Wyatt being one of them. Because
it's just a case of, like, you want to start doing it now then, because you only have these people around for so long. So, yeah, I would really be, like, for this sort of concept coming back down the line.
Or
is Bad News Barrett gimmicky enough?
No, I don't think so.
Well, yeah, because we just have to come down and says, "I'm afraid I've got some bad news. I'm about to win this battle royal," and then that'll be perfect.
And then give him the win.
I think that's fine.
Oh, and my God, R-Truth.
Oh, R-Truth would so be in this.
Oh yeah, but he'd like forget that it's a battle royal or whatever, and try and pin people immediately.
No, he'd win it and then go, "I'm so happy! I just won the Andre the Giant Memorial."
No, he would say that he won the Royal Rumble. And then
Yeah.
he's going to challenge for the championship at WrestleMania. And then it's like, well, it is WrestleMania, and this isn't the Royal Rumble. And oh, yeah, R-Truth would be, and you, especially if you could give him like the outfit that he was wearing before, where it was like the vest made out of the straight jacket.
Oh, and if they forgive him, Enzo Amore.
Oof. Yeah. Yeah, he would be in there.
Yeah. But yeah, I think we got a lot more conversation out of the Gimmick Battle Royal than I thought we would.
It's an awful, fucking amazing match.
Oh yeah, it's so much fun, and that's what you want WrestleMania to be. It doesn't always have to be great matches, but it has to be fun, and that's exactly what that match was. But now we move on to something which is a lot more technically proficient, and I wouldn't say as fun or amazing, but still an absolutely great match. Undertaker against Triple H.
One of my before the Shawn Michaels series, this was like my top 2 streak match, because this match, for me, it epitomizes a lot of what WrestleMania is. These were 2 guys in the prime of their career who had nothing else to do, so they put them together. You know, it's kind of like, I guess I'd have to compare it to Randy and AJ this year.
Yeah, pretty much.
But it's got that vibe of it.
Yeah.
You know, like, these 2 guys are going to kick each other's asses. They had the kind of match that I wish that Roman Reigns and Drew McIntyre were going to have.
I'll take some contention with you, the idea of this is the prime of Undertaker's career, because I might be alone in the panel in saying this, but I absolutely detest the American Badass gimmick.
I was more so speaking of, like, actual age and
physicality.
You know,
yeah, I guess so. But it's just.
But I'm with you there. I hate the American Badass is not my favorite. And actually, my favorite Undertaker is a much older Undertaker in about like 6-7 years.
Yeah, it's just a case of like this Undertaker represents everything that I dislike about the future Undertaker characters. It's the locker room leader, this is my yard character. And the thing about the Undertaker that always was so interesting or intriguing was the fact that he was this, I wouldn't say mystical spiritual being, but he was a guy that would always come back no matter how much he was beaten or like badly damaged. And I just think this character was like, he was very up himself.
Biker Taker is the reason I stopped watching.
Oh, that's good enough reason as anything, I guess.
Yeah,
really.
I got annoyed with Austin and The Rock being the only 2 things that they ever talked about in every single segment for every episode of Raw.
You're really gonna hate the main event.
And then I kind of like stopped watching wrestling a little bit, and it's like this is like 7th grade or whatever the hell it was. And somebody's like, "So did you watch Raw last week?" And I was like, "Nah, I haven't seen it in a while." And they're like, "Yeah, Undertaker's a biker now." And I was like, "All right, I'm done." Like, just no. You take my favorite character and make him a goddamn biker. No, like that's what I was like. I'm just gonna check out. Until Dace was like, "Yo, did you see that DX is back in 2006?" And I'm like, "What? Let me turn this on." You know?
Well, anyway, I've got to ask you a quick question, Tony. Are you ready for Motorhead to kick some ass?
You know what I'm not ready for is him to not remember the fucking lyrics.
I mean, it's amazing because like the first few lyrics are like it's all about the game and how you play it, and then it basically just says that same phrase over and over and over.
It's all about the game and how you play it. It's all about the game, and if you can play it, it's all about the game. Did you play it? It's like, and the rendition sucks. It's all sped up and everything. This is a terrible version of this.
Oh, this is this ranks highly in like the worst live WrestleMania musical performances, and that's a very like sizable list that features people like Kid Rock and Flo Rida and all of these other people. But this is, and Motorhead again in WrestleMania 21. But yeah, this is an awful rendition of Triple H's theme music, and Triple H has to act like he's so pumped up about Motorhead playing the music for him. He probably was in a certain level, but he must also realise that they're not singing his music right.
He's like, yeah, I am ready to play the game.
But it's Motorhead, and they are by far one of my favorite bands, and I wish that Lemmy got to play Triple H to the ring for more WrestleManias and got to be inducted in the Hall of Fame while still being alive.
Do you imagine how he would have fucked up the other themes? Like, how would he have, like, what line would he have gotten stuck on for King of Kings?
Bow down to the king.
Instead of bow down to the king, it would have been like, grovel now for the king, or something.
I'm the king, and I'm gonna kick your ass.
I'm the king of kings, and I'm gonna kick her.
But this is kind of like the first WrestleMania where they start talking about the streak as a thing. Like, they're not really being explicit about it, but Undertaker talks about how it's a decade of destruction, and how that kind of like is the building blocks or the foundation of the idea that he's got an unbeaten streak at WrestleMania.
Yeah,
So
this is kind of like I was saying about the intro and all of the stuff beforehand. This is the beginning of WWE embedding a lot of history into their stuff, whereas in eras prior they were like, no, we're all about the new era and the new generation and the attitude times, and now they're like, yeah, but look at all this history that we have.
So there's a really funny spot early on where they're brawling on the outside, and Undertaker punches Triple H onto the replacement Spanish announce table, and Triple H just goes straight through it. Like, that was just hilarious. Because like he just doesn't sell the bump at all, because it's not a real table bump, but it's pretty awesome.
Those poor Spanish announce table guys.
I was really like, again, we've talked about how the Undertaker character in this thing is not great. There's one thing that I definitely could live without, is him shouting old school before he tries to do it.
Yeah, but that's the only reason it's called old school, isn't it?
Yeah, because it's meant to just hark back to that was something that the old Undertaker did.
And now Elias does it.
But yeah, and it's still fucking dumb. Just like shouting old school. I'm about to do old school, and hey guy, I'm about to do it too. Don't listen to it, but I'm about to do old school to you. Like, talk about calling spots in the ring. Then they have this like a really good match. Like, it's going pretty well. Triple H tries to get his sledgehammer involved. And they start beating up the referee. Well, the referee takes a hell of a beating in this match. And then they start fighting around like the staging equipment once the referee's down, and have this huge bump to the outside where Triple H gets chokeslammed from the top of his staging equipment onto a crash mount on the floor. But that's a pretty nice spot, especially the first time you see it, because the first time you see it, you just see Triple H just fall. And that's just like such a great camera angle, because you look back at it after on the replay, it's like, wow, he landed on the softest mats in human history. Yep. You just see how, like, oh my god, it's so cheesy, like chintzy, really. Like, they didn't do a great job of hiding the fact that he's landing on a load of soft crash.
Can you imagine Jeff Hardy's backstage and he's like, "You had those?"
Like, yeah.
What the fuck?
But yeah, from the first angle, it looked pretty cool. And then with the referee down for a lot of it, they take the opportunity to use a few weapons. Undertaker gets busted open pretty badly. The best spot in this match, at least in my mind, is undoubtedly when he goes up for the last ride, and Triple H has the sledgehammer and just lands down. Like, you could easily see that as the finish of the streak, like before it even gets started.
Yeah, it could have worked.
I would have been fine with it, because that era Undertaker could lose. He didn't have the mythical presence that he would later on regain, and Triple H was a devious bastard, so it would have worked.
Do you think if they had him lose here and he came back as the normal, or the classic Undertaker, they claim his streak was still alive because that was a different Undertaker that lost?
I don't think that the streak would have even become a thing, really, at that much about that point.
I thought this was quite cool, because in this match, Triple H attempts a tombstone, and I thought that wouldn't have happened until like late years. Like, he did hit a tombstone in their WrestleMania 27 match, but like I thought it was quite odd that he actually went for one here, and then Undertaker hits one, and it's not the finish, because this is a period of time where the tombstone isn't Undertaker's main finish,
which is just wrong.
Yeah. Instead, Triple H makes the classic mistake in your matches against The Undertaker. You never go for the 10 punches in the corner. And then Undertaker immediately gets him up for the last ride, takes him down, and gets the victory. This is a really strong match between these two.
Yeah, rock solid match. Can't really complain.
Yeah, it's a good penultimate match.
There's a reason why they're still revered. I think their feud is a little overblown in modern era, but It's a good rivalry.
Yeah, if there are their next two matches, which I don't think should have even happened, I think that they only should have had one at most. But if they would have been as good as this one, then that would have been easily like, wow, Triple H becomes the guy that like Undertaker is synonymous with for WrestleMania type of thing. The other two, they don't live up to this one, I think.
Yeah, I think they're very different matches, but I can understand that this one is kind of these two in there, like Rob said, in the prime of their physical like well-being, where at the other two times they were kind of more just established as legends, where at this time they were just two main event stars.
So let's have some fun with this. They fought at 17, 27, and 28. If you could pick a WrestleMania for those two that you feel, okay, this is them at their best, where would you put them to go against each other?
If there's two of them at the best, it would have to be an Undertaker. I think 27 or 28 would have been fine. Maybe 27 because Undertaker was a bit younger at that point. But it had to, I prefer the late years Undertaker.
I think I would have put them at maybe 23, 24, because I think Triple H was starting to get to that, like, all right, I do kind of 5 moves of doom, but had he been in the ring with The Undertaker, I think he would have really pulled it out. And yeah, I think not quite where they met, but just a little bit before.
What does Taker do at 23?
Batista.
He fights Batista.
I thought that was 22 for some reason. Was he? Wait, 24 is Edge. So who's 20?
22 is Mark Henry.
Oh, okay. 22 is Mark Henry then. Okay, so
they could have also done it at 22.
Yeah, I don't know.
Yeah, well, 22 they couldn't have done it because Triple H was injured. But
no, you're thinking of 23.
Oh yeah, 22 is the John Cena one. I'm getting confused now. All this stuff.
See, I kind of look at the whole situation as like the Triple H Undertaker thing. It never should have happened a second time because the story was Shawn and Undertaker, and I don't know. I kind of think like the follow up to 26 should have been. Actually, I don't think 26 should have happened. I think 26 shouldn't have been Michael's Undertaker. I think it should have been Michael's Triple H. And then 27 should have been Triple H Undertaker. That's how I would have done it.
I agree 100%. But speaking of Michaels was rumored to fight Triple H at this WrestleMania, was he not?
Yeah, that was like a big storyline going in like the months leading up to this, that Shawn Michaels was going to be brought back into the fold for at least a one-off match with Triple H here. But as we spoke about in like the weeks leading up to this, it just doesn't come to fruition. Michaels was meant to, even in the last couple of weeks leading up to this, there was the idea that he was supposed to appear in some capacity, even involved in, maybe not involved in a wrestling sense, but like get involved in either a backstage segment or like interfere in a match or something along those lines. But as we saw, it just his backstage behavior put pay to that, and we wouldn't see him back until 2002.
Which worked out for the better because he got clean, which allowed him to have a sober career for, another 8 years.
Oh yeah, it's definitely something in hindsight we can say was positive. But let's move on to the point with the main event. The Rock against Stone Cold Steve Austin for the WWF Championship. First of all, that video package is an iconic video package.
And also the graphic of them showing the WWF Championship, but the side plates are Rock and Austin's faces. That's really cool.
I do have to say one thing though, and this just harks back to WWE today, is that they have this main event is Rock against Austin. They're arguably the two biggest wrestling stars in history. And yet they can't help themselves. They can't just leave that alone. They have to do this stupid gimmick where they make Deborah the Rock's manager for a little while. Just leave it alone. These two can sell themselves. Like Becky Lynch and Ronda Rousey, and if you want to add Charlotte, then fine, but this match can sell themselves. You don't have to make them dive through all these different hoops or twists and turns. It just needs to sell it on the match. The match is enough.
You know what, though? But they bring that back around, and it's in the promo where Austin says, fine, leave Deborah out of it. She's a non-factor. The fact is, you have that title, and you don't understand. I'm going to do whatever I can to get it.
Yeah, they did bring it around, but like it shouldn't even have been a consideration in the first place. Is what I'm saying.
Credit to them for building it in 4 weeks.
Yeah, that's true. Because Rock only won the championship at No Way Out, so originally it was getting a sense that Kurt Angle would come in with the WWE Championship, which still would have been good, but it just wouldn't have been this. It's essentially like this is pretty much the biggest match in terms of like two people that were just full time on the roster. I know The Rock is leaving to entering into the primitive stages of his film career, but in terms of like just two main roster, pretty much fully employed people, this might be the biggest match they've ever put on.
Yeah, which makes me sad because it's not like they haven't had opportunities. You know, at some point, Batista Cena, if positioned properly, could have been this match. Same thing with Cena Randy. You know, like they've had this opportunity, but they've never pulled the trigger, and I think that's something that's missing from WrestleMania today. It's not about the stars of today.
Is there anything that like compares to this in terms of like just the two top guys at this point in time?
Like in a different era?
From this era?
Like in a different era. Like the only things I could really consider is the only things I could even like come close to comparing it to is Andre against Hogan or Hogan against Warrior.
I was gonna say Macho Man.
But I'd also pair it with Brett and Shawn was the best match you could put on at WrestleMania 12. Same thing with their counterpart of their penultimate match of Diesel and Taker. That kind of syncs up with what we see here. And yeah, I guess you get it at 26 because you do have Cena and Batista, and arguably Shawn and Taker were still full-time.
But yeah, I think it's more about a sense of like you can have those people full-time, and no discredit to Bret Hart and Shawn Michaels, but they were never at the level of The Rock and Steve Austin in terms of popularity.
Okay, we're talking about like
two megastars, two big megastars. Like these are two people that you look at and think, like I say, these are two people that we fought over in terms of our Mount Rushmore of pro wrestling and stuff like that, fighting each other.
Yeah, see, as many years as Cena's been on top, that's the one thing I think he's missed. He never had a one-on-one like rival at WrestleMania that just headlines and they were the stars of the day. He always kind of fought Hunter or Michaels or Rock. He never had that one-on-one opponent.
That thing with Batista is the closest thing to it, pretty much. And if they would have done it, which they should have, but if it would have been Randy Orton versus John Cena instead of having Triple H thrown into the mix, then that would have been it.
Yeah, and even that I don't think would have come close to matching.
No. And I don't think it would have headlined.
No, it probably wouldn't have. But that's the closest thing to it for him. And now with Roman Reigns, it's like Roman has fucking Brock. That's it. And it's like that doesn't really count either. There's no like secondary with Roman.
I think you could put Roman if you positioned it right, like a Roman, even with like a Seth. I know they'll never be at this level because I think honestly you're getting that as close as you can with Becky and Ronda.
I would think the closest thing that you would get with that would be if they would have done the Shield triple threat. You would need all three.
But in terms of the actual match itself, like I think when we spoke like briefly about this in previous podcasts or like in just like behind the scenes or whatever, but these two do so much with so little.
Yeah.
Like in terms of the actual moves in this match, you could probably count them on two hands, the actual moves that are done in this match. But it's a lot of punching and like kicking and showmanship and stuff along those lines, but it feels like it means more than like matches nowadays. Just felt like everything had some sort of purpose or reason to it, or it comes across just like two guys just wanting to beat the shit out of each other and win the championship. And I thought that has a bit more of an impact than like some matches nowadays.
Do you guys feel,
Even if
though,
it's
that, like, the atmosphere around this is a little bit... This is going to sound like sacrilegious, but, like, well, these two are easily the biggest stars. Let's just do this again, and we haven't made any progress in the last 2 years.
Maybe, but hey, at least they had the star power to pull it off.
I think it was. I don't think it was a case of like not making progress over 2 years, but it's more of a case of like it's a different Rock and Austin. Like I know at WrestleMania 15 they'd already had this match, but this is an Austin who's come back as like the grizzled veteran looking to like reclaim his spot at the top after his long-term injury, and this is a Rock who's skyrocketed from being like the most hated heel to the most beloved babyface.
And for that matter, Rock is seasoned.
Yeah. These are two people at like at different stages of their careers. I don't see it as like a rehash of WrestleMania 15, as more of an evolution of it.
For that matter, same can be said for their final match at Mania, because that's also them meeting again at two different stages in their careers.
Yeah, even though they're only like 2 years apart in each time, it's like they just feel like different people in many different ways. But that might just be me thinking that, but there is
No,
there at least
I
some
agree.
aspect of it. Yeah. You have like there's a lot of weapon shots because they announced earlier in the match that this is no DQ and that's come out of nowhere. Like I think now we know what happened in hindsight and the way this match ends, it's probably quite easy to figure out as the steps go along like how this match was going to end. But I guess at that point in time there would be people who weren't figuring it out. But as soon as Vince McMahon comes out after this like hard fought match between the two of them, they've already done like a lot of their big moves. They've traded submissions. The crowd has been going crazy for a lot of it. And Vince McMahon comes down, and then the moment that he pulls the Rock off the pin or pulls the referee out when the Rock's got a pin or something along those lines, you kind of just know what's going to happen at that point. And that's when I know what's happened after like again the beauty of hindsight, but that's the moment my heart sinks for this match. Because even though it's still so sports entertainment and it's a lot of fun and it's really like active finish and they hit a lot of big moves and there's a lot of big kick outs, you know where it's ending and I'm not looking forward to it.
I'll give them credit. It's a unique finish in that. Like, it's not like, okay, the turn has happened and he's stunner. No, Austin just brutally beats the shit out of Rock with the chair. And again, it's hindsight, because maybe at the time you're like, oh, I can't wait to see Raw. But watching it now, it's like, it's a good match and it's iconic, but maybe their weakest match of the trio, to be honest, just because of how it ends and what it means for the story. Like, this is basically the death of the Stone Cold character, because after this it never quite feels the same, you know?
Oh yeah, I can agree with that.
You know what's something
what did you think that
bugs me about this though? You said about like the no DQ thing, and well, first off, it's no DQ. Why the hell are they doing the break with the ropes with the sharpshooter?
Yeah, that's I try and ignore that sort of stuff because that's just so inconsistent all the time. So,
but what bugs me is the elongated stuff with Vince and The Rock and Austin at the end, because it undercuts the idea. Vince is doing stuff with Austin for like 20 minutes. And JR keeps going, what is this? Are they actually aligned? And it's like, no fucking shit. They've been fighting. Like, the two of them have been beaten up on The Rock for an entire match segment now. And then it gets to like, at the end, I guess they are actually partnered up. And, like that's... I feel like this would have had more of a punch to it if it wouldn't have dragged on so long. If Vince would have came out, done the whole breakup, then Austin gets the chair, hits The Rock, and that's the end of it, I think it would be like, wow, what? Instead of 15 minutes of the same thing and JR going, no, are you actually doing this? Are you actually gonna... Yeah, he is. He clearly is.
I think JR still McCoy says and stuff like that, like Austin shaking hands with Satan himself. Austin sold his soul for the WWF Championship. I think they're really good, like buzzwords. But I totally agree that it's too played out. Like Vince is out there too long and doing too much stuff. And it's not the right environment to do it in because they're in Houston, Texas, and even though they're watching Vince McMahon and Austin just double team and beat up The Rock, and they'd been booing Vince the entire night beforehand, they still want to see Austin win because they're in Texas.
Yeah,
this is such the wrong crowd to do this in front of.
Bruce Pritchard on his podcast today said the Texas audience took it as, fuck yeah, McMahon saw the light and he's elbowing Stone Cold. Not, oh no, Austin sold his soul to the devil.
Yeah. I mean, it's a bad environment to do it in front of. It's like, you can't, the thought would be that The Rock would come back down the line and reignite this feud with Austin, but Rock's leaving for Hollywood immediately afterwards. Like his next show is like a rematch on Raw for the championship where Triple H and Austin form the 2-man power trip and all that stuff, which is obviously more great stuff. But it's just a case of, The Rock won't be there anymore, and now you've got Austin, who was your biggest babyface, is now your biggest heel. And you've got Triple H, who could have been the next big babyface if you wanted to position him that way, who's now also a huge heel alongside Austin. And so you're left with this slew of like babyfaces which have prominence but aren't anywhere near as big. So you have like The Undertaker and Kane, Chris Jericho, Chris Benoit. Like they're all like really great wrestlers and characters, but they're not The Rock, and they weren't Austin as a babyface. And you're trying to build like. The idea is like, even though the heel can be a big character and be involved in it and still attract a lot of attention, you want to get behind the babyface. And even though people like The Undertaker and stuff like that, you're not going to get behind them in the same way you got behind The Rock or Austin. If you see what I mean. Just like, this was just a huge, huge misstep on all parts. And this lies at the fault of, like, obviously McMahon for booking it and everyone else for going along with it, but it also lies with Austin because Austin wanted this. Austin wanted to be the heel. He wanted to turn heel at this event. And I know he's spoken in hindsight afterwards saying this was like the biggest mistake, one of the biggest mistakes he's made in his entire career, and that he should have called an audible and stunned Vince McMahon after the match and stayed as babyface. Just say like, oh, he used Vince McMahon. He thought Vince McMahon thought he was going to team up with him, but Austin actually ends up screwing him, and so he goes back to being a bit more of like a more calculating babyface. But yeah, this was just wrong on all levels.
Well, that's kind of what I wanted to get into, some what-if scenarios, because Austin has said, in hindsight, that that's what he would have done, and he could have gone on to be a tweener, with maybe, I guess, Triple H being the main babyface, or the main heel, and maybe Undertaker being the straight-up babyface. But also, on the Pritchard podcast today, Bruce alluded to it being Hunter was supposed to become the top face out of this, but they decided that Hunter didn't want to turn face, and they would rather do this tag team thing where they just wreak havoc among the whole roster. So, what do you think would have been the more satisfying ending?
The more satisfying ending? Tony, you answer that first.
I don't know, because again, I wasn't watching it, so I couldn't really digest like the Triple H and Austin stuff as well. But
yeah,
I kind of look at it as like, if you're losing The Rock is the top babyface. He's charismatic. He's got all these kind of qualifying factors, and Triple H and Undertaker are definitely like those guys that are nipping at the heels of that top spot kind of thing. And the idea of Triple H being the top babyface makes a lot of sense to me.
I think they were trying to position him for a long time to be the next top babyface, because he was playing, even though he was still a heel, he was playing like a pseudo babyface character for a lot of the latter part of 2000. But what I would do in terms of like make this finish more satisfying is just very straightforward. You have Austin win clean. That's just all you needed to do. Just have Austin just win the match. I think they got lost in the idea that they needed the next story going forward, and maybe I understand that like wrestling's Like, it's a never-ending thing. It's a never-ending cycle. It's not like there's an off-season or anything. You always need to think about what the next story is going to be. But you had, like, the two biggest stars, arguably, in all of wrestling history, probably them and Hulk Hogan. But at this point in time, it's, like, these two in the WWF having one epic match against each other, and then you just need to get a winner out of the two of them. And you know Rock's not going to be around any longer, so it has to be Austin who wins and holds the championship, unless you're going to just do a big switch on Monday Night Raw instead, which I don't think in that point in time they were doing that sort of booking. But yeah, I would just have Austin, just to cement the fact that this is like the biggest match in WrestleMania history, in WWE history, just have the clean victory for Austin. That's what I'd do. I don't think it needs to be complicated more than that. And that's the thing. It's just a case of WWE overcomplicating things, as they have a tendency to do.
Yeah.
I think I would have went with, if Austin, which sounds like it was the case, was dead set on being the heel, it might not have been the greatest thing, but I would have went with, okay, turn Hunter.
Well, that's the thing. It's like, I know Austin was dead set on being a heel, but Triple H was dead set on not turning face. So then you're in a real catch-22 situation where you've just got to say no to one of them.
Yeah, that's really shitty.
Yeah, and just put it this way, Triple H had probably enough backstage power with Stephanie McMahon at this point in time that he didn't need to. They could just refuse to doing that, and I would have been a case of just trying to convince Austin that turning heel was the wrong thing to do at this point in time. Like, you can tell by the way he comes out, and I know it's a Texas crowd, so they're partisan, but he's like ridiculously over. And I mean, we'll talk about it like down the line with like when Austin comes back to fight supposedly against the Alliance for Team WWF, and the old Stone Cold comes back. It's one of the loudest pops in history. And
Yeah.
And so people just didn't want to see Austin turn heel, even though he thinks that was for the best or that's what he wanted to do. It just wasn't it's not what's best for business. And that proves to be the case, because this WrestleMania 17 is really, you can point to many things about being the end of the Attitude Era or the end of other instances about it, but this really is the zenith of WWE's popularity.
It kind of seems like it, because people are going nuts for this match.
Yeah, I mean, it's an end of an era, really, in the sense that WCW's dead, ECW's pretty much dead. There's no competition. They're the biggest thing around. Wrestling is at a huge level of mainstream popularity, and like you got the two biggest stars, like you're saying, of like maybe all time, or at least in the modern era of wrestling history at this point in time, fighting in this huge match. The crowd is going crazy. They're really into it. Like, this is the peak, and it's all downhill from here. Like, as much as we it's not a case of like just shitting on what WWE does now and saying like, oh, they're terrible in everything they do, because they're not terrible in everything they do. They're definitely lazy in many aspects, and are lacking a certain amount of creativity or creative spark, and they do make plenty of mistakes. But they were making mistakes here as well at this point in time. But it's just all downhill because wrestling just gradually becomes less of a mainstream popularity. It goes back to being a niche subculture.
I think that what we're in right now is the closest it's been in years to actually being a popular thing. And I think that's only because of the internet. Niche subcultures are allowed to expand and seem like they're bigger. But I think that it's more mainstream now than it has been in at least 12 years.
I mean, I don't know if I go that far, but I can definitely see the point of like with the rise of social media, and especially WWE's presence on social media is probably far greater than a lot of other organizations. Just a case of like whether that's enough is hard to say. I think it's a more engaged but much smaller audience. It's probably the way I'd describe it, is an audience that's really engaged and dedicated and committed to the brand, and will watch it whether they like it or not like it in certain cases. But at this point in time, it's more of like, it's the it thing. It's the fad of the time. And you've got like millions and millions of people watching it that will end up stop watching it in the next couple of years or so.
That's a
But,
shame.
but in terms of like, if this is like the final, like this is the curtain call for the biggest period in like WWS history, it's kind of a hell of a way of going out.
I mean, it's
Yeah,
big
I think
enough
so.
that you can justify this as being the end of an era, and it makes sense.
Yeah.
Well, it
But
absolutely is. I think this is the end of. Maybe you can argue the Attitude Era, but I think you have to say it's the end of the Monday Night Wars. This is the final ending to the Monday Night Wars.
hmm and yeah, it's like this. At the end of the day, like whether you think this is the greatest WrestleMania of all time, like I've spoken at length, I think that this definitely a top 5 WrestleMania of all time. But I put WrestleMania 19 and WrestleMania 31 above this. I don't know whether you guys like Tony. This is the first time you've obviously watched it all the way through, and you've watched other WrestleManias like going forward. You haven't watched all of them, obviously, but in terms of the ones you've seen, where does this kind of rank?
This ranks really high because even though there are some like dips downward, and even a match like the Gimmick Battle Royals, admittedly a horrible match, it's still fun. And you know, there's certain things that feel like WrestleMania, and Test versus Eddie doesn't, but Triple H Undertaker, Austin Rock, the hardcore match, the TLC match, Vince and Shane, those all feel special. Angle Benoit is good. So it's more of I would say it's not, now that we're heading towards 35, it's not like the top for me or anything, but at the same time kind of looking at it as the like standard of what you should be looking for. Like everything should be this good if it's WrestleMania.
What do you
I
think,
think
Rob?
that's fair. For me, this is in my top 5. It's not my top, but it's definitely in the top tier of WrestleManias, and I don't think you get a better crowd than this WrestleMania.
I mean, the crowd is fantastic for this show, and yeah, I think this is like a real peak moment for WWE, and it feels like a big peak moment for them, like something they can just bask in their glory one last time before things start to go wrong. But yeah, I think WrestleMania 17, its reputation is well deserved, and yeah, it's like we say, it's all downhill from here for the rest of 2001. So, but hopefully you've enjoyed this.
For 2001, yes, it's all downhill. Yes.
Yeah, but I hope that doesn't put you off from keep watching this trip back in time, because we'll be continuing with more episodes of 2001 Wrestling Odyssey. Obviously now sans WCW and ECW events, but there's still plenty to talk about in the like history of WWE and the Alliance storyline, the invasion, all of that other stuff. So plenty to look forward to. But yeah, just probably good time now to just go around the horn with a few plugs. Tony, you're pretty good at plugs. Why don't you start with like just the whole hog of things for Smark Out Moment?
Oh, obviously, everybody, if you are listening to this, you should be subscribing to the YouTube channel. It's youtube.com/SmarkOutMoment. Hit that subscribe button, ring the bell for the notifications, and you will be aware of whatever we get is posted up on this channel whenever it happens. Those email alerts will come your way. You can also follow us at Facebook and Twitter at SmarkOutMoment. You can go to smarkoutmoment.com and find all the other content that's happening there, because it all funnels through the website in some fashion, one way or another. We've got a Redbubble and a TeePublic shop for merchandise side of things. There's a Patreon if you want to throw your spare change in our direction, help us keep the lights on, and motivate us to do certain other types of projects. I personally have fanboysanonymous.com for my geek culture side of things, so if you want to check out like a Shazam movie review coming up soon, that's where you'll find that. And I've got some other stuff all over the place, so if you just start clicking around, you will find my content on EWN and Bleacher Report and so on and so forth.
Well, for me, you can follow me on Twitter and Instagram at DudeFelice. You can check out Time Killer Apparel, which is my clothing line. And you can check out all the weekly articles on Smark Out Moment, such as The Triple Threat, which this week we are continuing with our WrestleMania 35 preview. Callum?
Okay, and finally for me, you can follow me on Twitter at Wigmaster14. Power rankings will be up at some point, either today or tomorrow. I have it written. I forgot to publish it. That's on me. But by the time you've listened to this, I have published it, so that's not an issue. So definitely check it out. And that's pretty much it. Other than the fact that we're going to have another 2001 Wrestling Odyssey for April. So obviously this is just a WrestleMania special because this WrestleMania is a big deal. It deserves its own episode to itself. But there will be an April one where we look back at the actual reheated tags, any news and events that took place, and a review of Backlash 2001 as well. So look forward to that. And so thanks very much for checking out the podcast and listening, everybody. This has been another Smark Out Moment, and we are being counted out.